Chapter 98. When Leng Shiqi heard Feng Feisha shout the word, kill, he knew that it was time for him to make a move. He took advantage of the moment when Tu Zhuang's mind was in turmoil and immediately used the confusion step technique to flash over. Halfway through, he shot out 2 rays of unblocking meridian sword chi to injure Tu Zhuang's legs and seal his meridians. Then he used the rainbow cauldron sword technique and the sword pierced towards Tu Zhuang like a rainbow. At the same time, Feng Feisha's heavy staff also smashed down. At this critical moment, Tu Lu hurriedly took out a sparkling jade tablet and crushed it. Following that, a green screen of light suddenly appeared. The green light screen formed a shield in front of Tu Zhuang. Leng Shiqi's sword light and Feng Feisha's heavy staff both hit the green shield. The green shield suddenly twisted rapidly and shattered in less than 2 breaths of time. But Tu Zhuang had already used this opportunity to retreat. At this moment, he stared at Leng Shiqi in shock and then looked at Feng Feisha with resentment. Tu Zhuang seemed to want to say something, but Feng Feisha was too lazy to talk nonsense and smashed with his heavy staff again. Leng Shiqi used the confusion step technique and the rainbow cauldron sword technique to attack. Whether it was cultivation or the realm of spiritual techniques, Leng Shiqi was much higher than Tu Zhuang. Together with Feng Feisha, who was at pure spirit realm level 5, Tu Zhuang was covered in wounds in a moment. But the rest of Tu Zhuang's people were all entangled and no one could come to his aid. What was worse was that his trump card was forced out the moment Leng Shiqi attacked. His legs were also injured and he couldn't run away. At this moment, it could be said that he was at the end of his rope. However, even if he was at the end of his rope, Tu Zhuang never thought of surrendering. Because he knew that Feng Feisha would definitely not let him go. Since that was the case, he could only fight to the death. It would be best if he could drag someone down with him. Unfortunately, how could Feng Feisha and Leng Shiqi give him this chance? The two of them immediately moved away in tacit understanding, unwilling to fight Tu Zhuang head-on. As a result, Slaughterer's injuries continued to worsen. In the end, Leng Shiqi managed to find an opening and stabbed him in the chest, causing him to fall to the ground. When Feng Feisha saw that his old rival was no longer breathing, his heart was filled with endless emotions. At the same time, he once again felt the power of Leng Shiqi. During the battle with Slaughterer, Feng Feisha had basically been slacking from the start to the end. He had only been looking for opportunities to sneak attack from the side. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that they were slaughtered by Leng Shiqi. With Tu Lu's death, there was no longer any suspense in the battle. Leng Shiqi and Feng Feisha continued to work together to quickly kill off the other 2 pure spirit realm spirit cultivators of Tu Zhuang. During this time, there were a few spirit assembly spirit cultivators who managed to escape, but they did not chase after them because the situation was already set. Feng Feisha and Leng Shiqi thought the same. After Feng Feisha finished off the last person, he said, "Brother Leng's strength is superb. It was all thanks to Brother Leng's help that we were able to kill Slaughterer." Leng Shiqi shook his head and said indifferently, "We each took what we needed. What does Sect Master Feng plan to do next? While the news hasn't been sent back yet, we will gather all our forces and attack the Tu Zhuang camp." It turned out that what Feng Feisha said to Slaughterer before was all a lie. It was just to make his mind waver. Feng Feisha's eyes were filled with fanaticism and greed. Soon, all the resources of Tu Zhuang would belong to him. And he would also dominate the sand. But at this moment, there was a burst of hurried footsteps in the distance. It was especially obvious when they stepped on the sand. Listening to these footsteps, there were probably no less than 50 to 60 people. Feng Feisha restrained his expression and frowned as he looked into the distance. He really couldn't figure out where so many people came from. Gradually, a large group of people walked over. Upon closer inspection, there were actually 60 people. Feng Feisha saw that these people did not look friendly and his heart sank. And when he saw the person in the lead, his heart skipped a beat. He recognized that the person was Yushu. At this time, Yushu's cultivation was already at the 6th level of pure spirit realm. Then there was no need to think about this group of people. They were definitely from the Yushu clan. But what made him feel even more terrified was that there was a person standing in the crowd behind Yushu. He was covered in a black robe and wearing a dark golden mask. That was Dark Crow. Feng Feisha no longer had the high-spirited appearance from before. His heart was already filled with endless regret. What was the Yushu clan doing here? They must be here to kill Ling Shiqi. But there were also a few doubts in his mind. Yesterday, Ling Shiqi just joined the Flying Sand clan. Today, the Yushu clan came. Who leaked the news? In addition, even if the Yushu clan came, they should go to the Flying Sand clan's camp. Why did they come here directly? He originally thought that after monopolizing the sand and accumulating resources, his strength would increase greatly. At that time, he might not be afraid of the Yushu clan. But now, how could he resist the joint attack of Yushu and the Dark Crow? A series of questions made Feng Feisha's face turn gloomy. Just when he was about to say something, he saw Yushu waving his hand and the 60 people behind him rushed forward. Feng Feisha immediately panicked. There were only a dozen people left on his side. How could he fight? Clan leader Yu, listen to me, Feng Feisha hurriedly shouted. Just when he opened his mouth, he definitely did not expect that Ling Shiqi, who was standing next to him, would suddenly throw out a punch. That punch was incomparably powerful. It was like a fierce tiger coming out of its cage and suddenly attacked. Feng Feisha was caught off guard and was directly hit by the punch. In an instant, cracking sounds could be heard coming from Feng Feisha's body. Who knew how many of his bones were broken? What was even more serious was that a surge of energy had entered his body and was crazily destroying his meridians and internal organs. This was Ling Shiqi's tiger wave stomping fist. Pooh! Feng Feisha vomited blood and fell to the ground. He looked at Ling Shiqi with a face full of disbelief. He opened his mouth, but before he could say anything, Yushu had already arrived and immediately slashed out with his sword. At the same time, Ling Shiqi also stabbed with his sword. Feng Feisha died just like that. If Tu Lu died with hatred, then Feng Feisha died with hatred. At the moment before he died, he finally understood that Ling Shiqi had already joined forces with the Yushu clan to seize the entire sand. It was a pity that he and Tu Lu were still negotiating for peace. It was laughable that he thought that his plan was flawless and that he could monopolize the sand. Pitiful and laughable. In the end, he was just a chess piece in someone else's hands. Ling Shiqi looked at Feng Feisha's eyes that gradually lost their luster. As if seeing through his thoughts, he secretly thought, not only you, all of us are chess pieces. What happened next was a completely unequal battle. In less than half an incense's time, the two pure spirit realm cultivators of the Flying Sand sect died. The remaining dozen or so spirit gathering realm cultivators either died or surrendered. And from the beginning to the end, that Dark Crow did not make a move. In fact, he was disguised by Mu 21. Before Ling Shiqi left, he left the mask behind to make Feng Feisha despair and reveal a flaw. Yushu walked over and whispered, "It's all settled, where do we go next?" Now that the leaders of Tu Zhuang and Flying Sand sect had died here, and half of the pure spirit realm cultivators had died, the remaining people were nothing to worry about. It could be said that the camps of Tu Zhuang and Flying Sand sect were like cooked ducks, allowing them to choose. Ling Shiqi thought for a moment and said, "A few people from Tu Zhuang escaped just now. The news might have been leaked out, and they might have directly escaped from the sand. It might be too late to rush over now, let's go to Flying Sand sect." "Alright, brothers, let's go to Flying Sand sect's camp." Yushu shouted and quickly left with his men. Chapter 99. Ling Shiqi finally broke through the barrier with the help of the demonic blood. A muffled sound came from his body, and then the aura of his whole body suddenly increased by a large margin. A gust of wind blew a few feet around his body. 7th level of the pure spirit realm. The moment Ling Shiqi broke through to the 7th level of the pure spirit realm, the sea of qi in his body began to expand, and it only stopped when it had nearly doubled in size. The expansion of the sea of qi was like a river flowing into the sea, absorbing the remaining power of the demonic blood. Leng Shiqi's complexion also returned to normal. But his heart was very calm, without sadness or joy, and he did not stand up. Then he took out the spiritual ruin Beast King's demonic core from the system space. Leng Shiqi was preparing to fuse the Beast Origin battle pattern. The Beast Origin battle pattern was a special spirit technique attached to the cultivation method Demonic Beast Origin Technique. The Demonic Beast Origin Technique had 3 levels: refining demonic blood, swallowing demonic core, and devouring demonic soul. Previously, Leng Shiqi was unable to cultivate the Demonic Beast Origin Technique to the 2nd level because he did not have a demonic core. Fortunately, he killed the spiritual ruin Beast King and obtained a demonic core. He was now at the 7th level of the pure spirit realm. Not only could he cultivate to the 2nd level of the Demonic Beast Origin Technique, but he could also fuse the unique Beast Origin battle pattern of the 2nd level. This Beast Origin battle pattern was a kind of spirit technique that was attached to the body. After successfully cultivating it, demonic beast patterns would appear on the body, which had different amplification effects on the cultivator. It could also greatly increase the strength of the body. As for what kind of amplification it was, it depended on what kind of demonic core was fused. For example, demonic beasts like the blood-spotted leopard increased speed. If it was a black-haired bear, it increased defense. Leng Shiqi guessed that the spiritual ruin Beast King's amplification should be strength. The first level of refining demonic blood could quickly increase cultivation, the 2nd level of swallowing demonic core could strengthen the body, and as for the 3rd level of devouring demonic soul, because the cultivation method was incomplete, he did not know what effect it had. Then, Leng Shiqi quickly went through the chant of fusing the Beast Origin battle pattern in his heart several times, and resolutely swallowed the demonic core of the spiritual ruin Beast King. Refining monster cores was different from refining monster blood. After the demonic blood entered his mouth, it transformed into violent spiritual energy. However, the demonic core instantly dispersed into countless specks of light that merged into his muscles, bones, and blood vessels. However, this process was still extremely violent. Those dots of light did not gently merge into the muscles, bones, and blood vessels. Instead, they violently destroyed the original meridians and bones, and then reconstructed them. This process was undoubtedly extremely painful. Even with Leng Shiqi's astonishing willpower, he still let out a series of screams. His face was already covered in sweat. Fortunately, the flowing ink robe worked again, alleviating his pain a little and allowing him to maintain the beast energy battle pattern. But gradually, all the bones and meridians in his body seemed to be violently destroyed and reconstructed. Even with the help of the flowing ink robe, he could not hold on any longer. Just as Leng Shiqi's meridians were about to be destroyed and he was about to die, spots of golden light suddenly appeared in his body. As soon as those light spots appeared, the power of the monster core instantly became obedient. Even the Leng Shiqi could control it at will. Those golden light spots even merged into Leng Shiqi's bones and meridians in the end. Leng Shiqi remembered that these golden light spots were the golden rain formed when the golden light shield shattered after he obtained the rank 4 pill. At that time, when the golden rain entered his body, Leng Shiqi specially studied it for a while, but he could not find any traces of the light spots in his body. He did not expect that at this moment, those light spots would actually take the initiative to come out and help him suppress the power of the monster core. Although he did not know the reason, it was a good thing. Leng Shiqi immediately focused on condensing the beast energy battle pattern. At this time, a strange pattern was slowly outlined on Leng Shiqi's back. As time passed, the pattern became more and more complete. After about an hour, it formed the appearance of a ferocious beast. Looking closely, it was the appearance of the spiritual ruin Beast King. The slightly different thing was that there were a few golden lines on the pattern of the spiritual ruin Beast King. Roar! Finally, when the pattern was completely formed, Leng Shiqi suddenly let out a beast-like roar. Then his bones and muscles rapidly grew. In the blink of an eye, Leng Shiqi's body suddenly became tall and strong. He was almost as tall as an adult. Not only that, but his entire body also bulged with fierce muscles. Fortunately, Leng Shiqi's flowing ink clothes were not ordinary. They were extremely tough and did not burst because of this. However, Ling Shiqi now looked like he was wearing a tight suit that was a few sizes too small. It looked a little funny. However, Ling Shiqi could feel that there was a huge amount of power in his body. Even his eyes were covered with a faint layer of bloody light. His heart was filled with irritation and fury. Now he only wanted to destroy everything that he saw. He stomped his right foot and directly jumped out of a hole in the ground. In the next moment, he rushed to the mountain wall and punched. Boom! Ling Shiqi's fist instantly blasted an inch-deep hole in the mountain wall. Boom boom boom. Ling Shiqi's fist constantly smashed into the mountain wall, blasting out one hole after another. Even the top of the cave was scattered with scattered rocks. Gradually, the bloody light in Ling Shiqi's eyes disappeared. He immediately realized what he was doing and immediately formed a spiritual seal. Once the spiritual seal was formed, the spiritual ruin beast king pattern on Ling Shiqi's back dimmed. His body began to gradually shrink and return to its normal size. At the same time, the power in his body also receded like the tide. At this moment, Ling Shiqi suddenly felt a slight sense of fatigue. Looking at the devastated mountain wall that he had destroyed, his eyes flashed with various emotions. Although the beast origin battle pattern was successfully smelted, the spiritual ruin beast king's pattern was too violent. At present, Ling Shiqi could not completely control it. He would even be controlled by the power and temporarily lose his consciousness. In addition, maintaining this state would also squeeze out his physical strength and body at all times. He only maintained it for a short while and felt a little tired. However, its power was indeed very fierce. Ling Shiqi did not use much spiritual power when he punched just now, but relied on the power of his body. If he added spiritual power and spiritual skills on top of this, how strong would he be? Overall, Ling Shiqi was still very satisfied with the beast origin battle pattern, but he could not use it easily and could only treat it as a trump card. Consecutively breaking through the 7th level of the pure spirit realm and refining the beast origin battle pattern had greatly enhanced Ling Shiqi's cultivation and physical strength. It also gave him greater confidence to survive. In the following time, Ling Shiqi continued to sit cross-legged and began to consolidate the 7th level of the pure spirit realm. Unexpectedly, a day later, Ziyu flew back and brought him news of Yushu. Blood Mist Island has changed. The monster beast is rampaging. Return quickly. Chapter 100. Thank you very much for the tips and monthly votes of my book friend, not by Xiaojun. Seeing this message, Ling Shiqi thought that the thing he was worried about had happened. Looking down, according to the message, all the monsters on Blood Fog Island suddenly went berserk yesterday. Originally, there were some demonic beasts in each area, but those demonic beasts were wandering aimlessly. As long as one stayed far away from them, nothing would happen. Only when fighting for resources would they occasionally fight with monsters. And now, with the increase of everyone's strength, rank 1 monsters were no longer unstoppable. But since yesterday, those wandering monsters suddenly went crazy, looking for humans to attack. They even rushed into the camp. At that time, Yushu was still in the desert camp, and suddenly 3 monsters ran over. Fortunately, there were many people in the desert. Under Yushu's command, they killed the monsters, but more than 10 people were injured. The camp in the withered forest was also attacked by monsters. Fortunately, this camp was run by the Yushu clan for the longest time, and they also set up some traps. There were also 4 pure spirit realm cultivators in the camp, and they barely repelled the monsters. But the camp in the fog area suffered heavy losses. Because Yushu knew that the fog area and the Blood Moon's forces bordered, the 2 sides were now in an alliance and would not attack each other. Therefore, the camp in the fog area had the least manpower, and only 1 pure spirit realm cultivator was in charge. After being attacked by the monsters, only a few people escaped, and the rest were all dead. Now, Yushu meant that he would guard the desert and let Ling Shiqi take charge of the camp in the withered forest. As for the fog area, they could only give up. But Ling Shiqi did not think so. He felt that it was necessary to go to the fog area. First, it was to eliminate the monsters, and second, it was for another purpose. Immediately, Ling Shiqi passed the message to Yushu, and went straight to the fog area. When he arrived at the misty camp, he saw 3 demonic beasts entrenched there. When the beasts saw the Ling Shiqi, their eyes suddenly glowed with blood-red light, and they rushed straight over. Ling Shiqi's expression did not change, and a saber appeared in his hand. The first demon beast pounced over. Ling Shiqi moved his feet slightly to the side to avoid it, and then he slashed out a magnificent crescent moon blade aura. The saber flashed, and the demonic beast was beheaded. Beheading a rank 1 demonic beast with a single slash. With Ling Shiqi's current cultivation at the 7th level of the pure spirit realm, coupled with the might of the waning moon's swift slash and the strength of his physical body, ordinary rank 1 demonic beasts were no longer a threat to him. The other 2 demonic beasts followed closely. Ling Shiqi put away his saber and picked up his sword. His body moved and turned into several shadows, passing through the middle of the 2 demonic beasts with sharp sword light and invisible sword chi. Puff, 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 several terrifying wounds appeared on the 2 demonic beasts in an instant, and sword chi rushed into their bodies to destroy their flesh and blood, but they did not die for a while. Ling Shiqi put away his sword again, and made a gesture with both hands, and several blood columns spurted out from the wounds of the demonic beasts. The demonic beasts let out a frightened and powerless roar, and their blood was gradually drained and they died. After a while, Ling Shiqi gathered 3 blood balls in his hand. He put away the blood balls and sold the corpses of the demonic beasts to the system. Everything was so neat and skillful. The 3 rank 1 demonic beasts that could destroy a small camp were like 3 toys in the hands of Ling Shiqi, and they were casually disposed of. Then Ling Shiqi looked around, found the direction in his memory, and left here. Soon after, he found the place where he hid to recover his spiritual power after killing the ape-shaped demonic beasts. That is, the place where he accidentally found the underground space. Coming here again, Ling Shiqi couldn't help but sigh a little. The last time he was here, his cultivation was still at the 2nd level of the pure spirit realm, and in order to kill a rank 1 demonic beast, he used all his skills. Moreover, he was forced by the Yushu clan and the Belichuan at that time. But now, his cultivation was already at the 7th level of the pure spirit realm, and he was able to casually kill a rank 1 demon beast. The 100-kilometer regiment had already become history, and the Jade Tree Gang had become something in his hands. Now, he even secretly controlled an entire 3 large areas. In just the past 2 or 3 months, both his strength and influence had undergone tremendous changes. But now was not the time to sigh. The sudden outbreak of the demonic beasts was definitely not accidental, and he even felt that this was just the beginning. In the face of unknown changes, this was the only place that could give him an answer. With a thought, Ling Shiqi's entire body gradually sank into the ground. After entering the ground, Ling Shiqi immediately raised his vigilance because he knew that there were restrictions around this place, but they were not activated. When Ling Shiqi sank to the lowest point, he was not in a hurry. Instead, he poked 2 small holes and carefully observed the situation inside. This underground space was no different from the last time Ling Shiqi came here. After observing for a long time, he resolutely descended, but when he landed on the ground of the underground space, he directly drilled in. Then, he stopped moving. This time, he did not break into the passages out of curiosity. Last time, he escaped because of luck. If he was discovered again, he might really die here. Now, what he had to do was wait. The place he was at was the intersection of several passages. He believed that someone would definitely pass by here, and maybe he could hear some useful information. He waited for a full 2 days. Ling Shiqi was also very calm. After all, he had a lot of food and water in the system space, so he could wait slowly. Finally, at this time, he heard light footsteps and the sound of conversation coming from above. Sigh, the formation can't hold on anymore. What should we do? Hee, what else can we do? We just have to shrink the secret realm. In that case, all the things we've worked so hard to set up will be destroyed. It's better if it's destroyed. Then we won't need so many people, and we can retire. Humph, retire? Do you think the Blood Garment Pavilion went through so much trouble to keep you alive so that you can retire? What do you mean? What do I mean? Don't you understand? Why don't you think of a way to contribute before the secret realm shrinks? Only with meritorious service can you survive. Look at Zhuo, he's really a sly old fox. When he knew that the formation could not hold on any longer, he directly offered his years of research to make the demon beast go berserk. He won the favor of the higher-ups. Zhuo does have some skills. That's why we have to find a way to contribute in this month. I just happen to have an idea here, and I need Brother Lin's help. Don't worry, after it's done, we'll split the credit equally. Oh. Brother Zhuang, what idea do you have? I'm all ears. Ha ha ha, Brother Lin, listen carefully. Their voices gradually drifted away, and the rest could not be heard. But that was enough. Leng Shiqi obtained a few important pieces of information from their conversation. The demon beast going berserk on Blood Mist Island was related to Zhuo. Leng Shiqi remembered that Zhuo specialized in studying demon beasts. Later, he also guessed that the demonic beast technique was created by Zhuo. As someone who cultivated the demonic beast technique, he naturally knew how profound and strange this technique was. It could be said that it completely defeated the Moonlight Cloud Codex, which was also a third-stage technique. The reason Zhuo could make the demon beast go berserk was because the formation was unstable. And the result of the formation's instability was to shrink the size of Blood Mist Island. In other words, the heavens collapsing calamity might happen again. The time was within a month. Chapter 101. Within a month, the heavenly collapse will happen again. This news caused Leng Shiqi's hair to stand on end. If the heavenly collapse happens again, the entire inner area will disappear, leaving only the small mountain behind. Currently, all the factions would only venture up the mountain when they were collecting food and water. This was because there were many rank 1 monsters on the mountain and they appeared very frequently. There were even people who had seen rank 2 monsters appear. That small mountain was very dangerous. Leng Shiqi was also very glad that he had made this trip. Otherwise, he would have disappeared from the world in a month. In the face of the heavenly collapse, what was the use of being strong? At that time, only those who were close to the mountain would be able to survive. Facing such a situation, Leng Shiqi's joy from the increase in his strength was completely extinguished. Then, Leng Shiqi continued to stay underground for a while. After confirming that there was no movement, he quickly returned to the surface of the foggy area. After returning to the surface, he first took a few deep breaths. Then, his eyes flashed and countless different thoughts flashed through his mind. He had to move the Yushu clan to the mountain within a month, no, within half a month. Moreover, he could not waste the 3 areas he occupied. It was best to maximize the benefits. After thinking for a while, Leng Shiqi put on his mask and returned to the camp in the withered forest. When Leng Shiqi arrived at the camp as a dark crow, he discovered that there were quite a few injured people in the camp. It seemed that the demonic beast rampage a few days ago had caused quite a lot of damage. When the gang members saw Leng Shiqi return, they all looked at him with respect. Although he rarely appeared in the gang, everyone knew of his strength. This was the respect they had for the strong. What surprised Leng Shiqi was that Yushu was not here. After finding blood is no different, he found out that Yushu was still overseeing the camp in the desert. He had gathered all the wounded people here and placed most of his forces here. According to Yushu, he alone was enough to deal with a monster. There was no need to place too much of his forces in the desert. The camp in the withered forest was left to Hua Lingling, and blood is no different to take care of. Hua Lingling had followed Yushu for a long time and was very familiar with the gang's affairs. Blood is no different was originally in charge of the Belichuan. Therefore, the two of them took care of the camp in an orderly manner. This made Leng Shiqi, the vice gang leader, feel a little embarrassed. Therefore, Leng Shiqi asked, "Is there any monster roaming in the withered forest?" Hua Lingling and Blood is no different were slightly surprised. Blood is no different replied, there should be one or two. They were repelled by us before. Maybe they're hiding somewhere to heal their wounds. That's right. It seems that there are still monsters coming down from the mountain. Yesterday, one appeared at the entrance of the camp. It wandered around for a while and then left. Hua Lingling added. Ling Shiqi nodded and said, send a few fast brothers to scout out the monster's location. Vice gang leader, what do you want to do? Hua Lingling asked, puzzled. Blood is no different's expression changed slightly. He seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly said, I'll do it right away. Go. I have an urgent matter to discuss with the gang leader. Before that, let's get rid of these hidden dangers. Ling Shiqi said calmly. Hua Lingling swallowed her saliva. She thought for a moment before understanding the meaning of get rid of these hidden dangers. Then, she followed blood is no different in a daze. Ling Shiqi looked at the departing Hua Lingling with amusement. He felt that it was not bad to have a little girl like her by his side. After about 4 hours, the people that Shui Wui sent out not only found traces of the demonic beast, but also directly brought the demonic beast back. Or rather, they were chased all the way here by the monster. A thin young man ran towards them, shouting, Save me, save me! Because there was a monster right behind him. The people in the camp heard the cry for help from afar. They immediately picked up their weapons and rushed out of the camp in an orderly manner. However, there was a figure that was faster than them. Ling Shiqi stepped on the black fog and directly overtook the crowd to rush forward. Just as the monster raised its claws and smashed towards the youth, Ling Shiqi arrived. Shing! Ling Shiqi unsheathed his saber and slashed out a dazzling saber aura. The saber aura flashed and the monster's claws were directly cut off. The monster fell to the ground with a bang. Ling Shiqi immediately pulled back his saber and punched out. Both of his fists fiercely smashed into the monster's body. The monster's huge body was actually sent flying by the two fists. It rolled a few times on the ground. Ling Shiqi followed closely and chopped off its huge head. 2 slashes and 2 punches killed a rank 1 monster. The people who were still running over suddenly stopped in their tracks. It was as if time had suddenly stopped. The scene looked a little strange. Ling Shiqi pulled back his saber and clapped his hands. He softly said, Get rid of it, it smells bad. After saying this, he walked straight into the camp. Everyone was already stunned, but they still subconsciously opened up a small path for him. After Ling Shiqi returned to the tent for a while, everyone finally came back to their senses. Their first reaction was not shock, but surprise. They all knew that this vice leader's strength was extraordinary, but they never thought that he was strong enough to easily kill a monster. With such a strong person, they suddenly felt a strong sense of security. The panic of being attacked by monsters in the past few days was blown away. Soon after, another 3 demonic beasts were lured over. Ling Shiqi easily dealt with them in a few moves. At first, everyone was surprised, but in the end, they were a little numb. 3 slashes to kill a monster? Oh. That's it. Ling Shiqi used a cloth to wipe the blood on his clothes and asked Hua Lingling, and blood is no different. Blood is no different replied, including the 2 that were repelled and the 2 that came from the mountain. You should have killed all of them. Hua Lingling nodded. That's good. I can leave without worry, Ling Shiqi said calmly. What? Sir, you're leaving? The 2 were a little surprised. Although Ling Shiqi had only been here for less than a day, he gave them a great sense of security and trust. Now that he suddenly said he was leaving, they were a little at a loss. Ling Shiqi finished wiping his saber and said, I have something to discuss with the leader. I will be back soon. Sir, be careful, the 2 said in unison. After that, Ling Shiqi nodded and left, heading straight for the camp in the desert. There were not many people in the desert camp, only about 30 to 40 people. There were also a few unfamiliar faces. However, looking at these people's calm expressions, he knew that the situation here was not bad. When Ling Shiqi arrived, he immediately found Yushu and asked, is there any power in Wind Valley? Yushu opened his mouth. He did not know why he suddenly asked about the situation in Wind Valley, but he still answered, there is no power in Wind Valley at the moment. However, there is a loose alliance formed by some escaped spirit cultivators. They gathered together to fight against the monsters. Ling Shiqi's eyes flashed and he explained a few things to Yushu. A few complicated expressions appeared on Yushu's face. There was doubt, worry, shock, and finally madness. Chapter 102. Not long after, Blood Moon's camp welcomed another uninvited guest. When Ling Shiqi appeared in Delta Origi's tent, Delta Origi did not feel surprised at all. She was even a little used to it. However, when they subconsciously probed the other party's cultivation, they all exclaimed, 7th level of the pure spirit realm? That's right, Delta Origi's cultivation had also reached the 7th level of the pure spirit realm. In fact, Ling Shiqi still had some thoughts in his mind before he came. In his memory, ever since Delta Origi obtained the first cultivation method, her cultivation had risen at a terrifying speed, and Ling Shiqi's cultivation had always been lower than Delta Origi's. Even after Delta Origi broke through to the pure spirit realm, he had just reached the 8th level of the spirit gathering realm, and the gap between the two was getting bigger and bigger. Before entering the dungeon, Ling Shiqi finally caught up with Delta Origi's footsteps at the 6th level of the pure spirit realm. A day ago, when Ling Shiqi forcibly broke through to the 7th level of the pure spirit realm by refining the spiritual ruin Beast King's demon blood, he felt that he had finally surpassed Delta Origi. But he never thought that Delta Origi would also cultivate to the 7th level of the pure spirit realm. Similarly, Ling Shiqi also brought Delta Origi a lot of surprise, but just as the two were staring at each other, a figure appeared outside the tent and asked softly, Moon Master, what's the matter? Delta Origi restrained her surprised expression and said coldly, nothing, you can leave. Yes. Ling Shiqi asked softly, when did you break through? Just these 2 days, Delta Origi said, her eyes staring at Ling Shiqi as if they could speak. Ling Shiqi could only say, what a coincidence, I also broke through in these 2 days. You didn't come here to show off, did you? Ahem, of course not. I have something urgent to talk to you about. Ling Shiqi's face darkened, and his tone became more serious. Seeing this, the Delta Origi said seriously, let's hear it. Let me ask you first. How are the demonic beasts on your side? With me around, they won't be able to do anything, the Delta Origi said calmly with a hint of arrogance in her tone. Ling Shiqi narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, that's good. Let's talk about a deal. I have an extremely important piece of information that I can share with you. This information is even related to your life. Delta Origi's expression changed, as if judging the authenticity of Ling Shiqi's words. Then, she said, what do you want? I want your spirit technique that can hide your cultivation. Ling Shiqi raised his eyebrows slightly and said what he wanted. Ling Shiqi also felt that his cultivation at the 7th level of the pure spirit realm was indeed a bit eye-catching. These 2 days, he had been deliberately suppressing the strength of his strength. Fortunately, he had made his moves in front of the Yushu clan. Those spirit-gathering realm spirit cultivators couldn't sense how strong he was, and Yushu, while Lingling, and Blood is no different wouldn't brazenly sense his cultivation. Therefore, at present, other than the Delta Origi, no one knew his true cultivation. Therefore, he turned his attention to the Delta Origi. If he could hide his cultivation, sometimes it could have a miraculous effect. Delta Origi revealed a playful expression and said, so that's your idea. Actually, my breath-restraining technique isn't a spirit technique. To be precise, it's a secret technique. It only changes the way the spirit energy flows. It's not that brilliant. It doesn't need to be brilliant, as long as it's practical. Ling Shiqi said indifferently. This secret technique isn't that precious. If your information is valuable enough, you can take it at any time. So, you've agreed. You can tell me your information. A few days later. The sudden riot of the demonic beasts caught all the spirit cultivators of the Blood Mist Island unprepared. Everyone was in a state of panic. However, the Yushu clan was one of the exceptions. What was strange was that at this time, all the members of the Yushu clan were gathered in the desert camp. Yushu passed down one order after another, and the few pure spirit realm spirit cultivators under him also carried out their duties. The entire camp was operating quickly in an orderly manner. Tomorrow was the time for resources to erupt, and it was also the time for them to take action. Ling Shiqi asked Yushu, who was beside him. Everything has been arranged, right? Don't worry, I've already given the orders. Everyone knows what they have to do. Mu 21 and the others have also gone up the mountain to find a suitable place. They should be back soon. Yushu spoke seriously at this time. He had always been at ease with Yushu's arrangements, so he didn't ask too much. And let everyone rest well today. Tomorrow will be very tiring. Understood. The next morning, all the members of the Yushu clan, more than 100 people, stood in an orderly manner. They didn't bring any food or water with them, and all of them went into battle lightly. Everyone's face was filled with killing intent. Yushu stood at the front, and behind him was a row of pure spirit realm spirit cultivators, including Ling Shiqi. After a careful count, there were as many as 13 people. Ever since the puppet battle at the wetland, the Yushu clan had not been stingy with the distribution of cultivation resources. In addition to the recent few battles, there were several people who had broken through to the pure spirit realm. Yushu rubbed his hands and whispered to Ling Shiqi, "Why am I still a little nervous?" "Since that's the case, then don't go." Ling Shiqi replied snappily. "Hee, I'm just kidding, I'm just kidding." Yushu then shouted loudly, "Brothers, let's go." With Yushu's order, more than 100 people immediately took action and rushed towards Wind Valley. There was only a group of scattered desperados in Wind Valley, and most of them were from forces that had already been destroyed. In order to fight against the rampaging demonic beasts, they had no choice but to form a temporary alliance. But today, when the cultivation resources were erupting, they began to argue with each other. Just as they were arguing and spitting everywhere, they heard orderly footsteps coming from afar. They turned around and saw more than 100 people from the Yushu clan charging towards them aggressively. How could this motley crew have any thoughts of resisting? They immediately scattered like monkeys on a fallen tree, each one running faster than the other. However, the Yushu clan did not chase after them. Instead, they directly barged in to plunder the resources. Unfortunately, there were not many precious resources here, so their harvest was limited. Coincidentally, a loud noise came from the sky and dozens of resources of various colors erupted. Ling Shiqi and Yushu looked at each other. They each led half of their men and moved separately, beginning to quickly plunder all the resources that had fallen into Wind Valley. In order to be quick, they only plundered the resources and did not kill anyone. Of course, if someone acted recklessly, they could not blame anyone else. Soon, Ling Shiqi and Yushu met again. They then charged towards the next area, the depression. In the depression, there was a force called the Picta Society that occupied this area. They were not weak at all. After the resources erupted, the members of the Picta Society split up to search for resources. At this moment, the Yushu clan suddenly charged in like a ferocious dragon crossing the river, directly attacking the Picta Society's camp. The Picta Society's president, Bai Langtao, was also at the 5th level of the pure spirit realm. He was not weak at all, but he was no match for Ling Shiqi and Yushu. The two of them immediately joined forces and charged in, killing Bai Langtao in just a dozen moves. Without a leader, the others instantly panicked and fled as far as they could. The Yushu clan did not chase after them either. They only cared about plundering the resources wantonly and finally swaggered off. Then, the entire Yushu clan turned back like a swarm of locusts and plundered the resources that had fallen on the sand, the withered forest, and the misty area. In the end, they all gathered at the withered forest's camp. Chapter 103. On this day, the Yushu clan plundered the resources of 5 regions like a madman, shocking and infuriating the other factions. They were shocked that the Yushu clan had such a crazy decision and terrifying strength. They were infuriated because they were powerless. especially the people of the Picta society. Their president had been killed by Ling Shiqi and Yushu, who had snatched the resources that they had collected for a long time. Furthermore, they had run away after snatching the resources, while they could only watch helplessly. The Yushu clan's hooligan-like actions filled them with righteous indignation, and they even shouted that they would join forces with the other factions to destroy the Yushu clan. However, no one was willing to provoke such a powerful and shameless person. Just as the various factions were considering how to guard against the Yushu clan's shameless actions, an even more shocking piece of news arrived. The Yushu clan had actually openly sent people to build a camp in the mountains. Their first reaction when they received the news was that the Yushu clan had not gone mad, but had truly lost their minds. The demonic beasts on the Blood Mist Island had already gone berserk, and it was already very good for everyone to be able to protect their own land. The mountains were also viewed as forbidden grounds, and no one dared to go up the mountains to collect food and water. However, the Yushu clan actually dared to openly build a camp in the mountains? Crazy, crazy. Just as everyone thought that the Yushu clan had gone mad, the Blood Moon also made a big move, and what they did was exactly the same as the Yushu clan. First, they plundered the resources of the nearby regions, then went up the mountains to build a camp. If the Yushu clan had gone mad, then did they also go mad? This could not be a coincidence. The various factions had a vague feeling that there was something fishy going on. Especially Hengming. He knew that Yushu and the Delta Origi were people who would not do anything without benefits. There had to be a special reason for the two of them to do such a seemingly crazy thing at the same time. Meng Ming sat alone and did not say anything. He closed his eyes and pondered. After a long while, he suddenly opened his eyes and murmured, "This is a signal." Thus, Meng Ming summoned all the pure spirit realm spirit cultivators under him and gave out one shocking order after another. At this moment, everyone was guessing the intentions of the Yushu clan and Blood Moon. The entire Blood Mist Island seemed to have become even more tense. At this time, Ling Shiqi was wearing a black gold mask and sitting on a wooden stool. There were 30 to 40 people around him who were busy clearing the area and setting up camp. With Ling Shiqi personally overseeing this place, there naturally wouldn't be any problems. If there were any problems, they would have already been solved. At the same time, on the other side of the hill, another group of people was doing the same thing. They were Blood Moon's people. Not long after, the Delta Origi arrived. When the two of them were far away, Delta Origi said directly, "Why did you make a move so early? If other factions noticed, they might also come up the mountain." When Ling Shiqi told the Delta Origi that the sky would fall again, the Delta Origi was also extremely shocked. The scene of the first sky fall was still vivid in their minds. At that time, they were lucky that they were in the inner region, otherwise, they might not have survived. She didn't doubt the authenticity of Ling Shiqi's news because Ling Shiqi wouldn't and didn't need to lie to her. At the same time, the Delta Origi also knew about Ling Shiqi's follow-up plan. However, she thought that Ling Shiqi would wait for a while before making a move. It would be best if they could snatch a large amount of resources before the sky falls and then let the majority of the people die. Then, they could basically monopolize all the resources on the Blood Mist Island. However, she didn't expect that Ling Shiqi would make a move so early. He even went up the mountain to build a camp, as if he was afraid that others wouldn't know. Ling Shiqi replied, "No one knows when the sky will fall again. We can't delay. Moreover, it takes time to build a camp and move resources. These things can be done in 2 or 3 days." The Delta Origi wasn't satisfied with Ling Shiqi's explanation. Ling Shiqi glanced at the Delta Origi and said, "Then you want everyone else to die in the skyfall? Isn't that good?" The Delta Origi's words were full of coldness. "It's very good. This way, we can reduce the number of competitors by more than half. But have you ever thought about what happened after the first heavenly collapse calamity? Corrosive rain fell from the sky and rank 1 monsters frequently appeared. Then after the second sky fall, do you think the Blood Mist Island will also have some unexpected changes?" The Delta Origi frowned and didn't say anything. Seeing this, Ling Shiqi continued, "After this sky fall, we don't know what kind of terrifying dangers will appear. There might even be rank 2 monsters. This small mountain isn't too big, but it's not small either. It can easily accommodate a few hundred people. Isn't it good to have so many people to help us share the unknown dangers? The Delta Origi paused for a while before saying, "Your vision is further than mine, and your heart is more ruthless than mine." After saying this, the Delta Origi turned and left. Ling Shiqi shook his head slightly and returned to the Yushu clan's group. In the following days, the construction of the camp went smoothly. Moreover, a large amount of resources were moved here. It could be said that the Yushu clan completely abandoned the 3 areas they had already occupied and moved to occupy an excellent place on the mountain. However, the Blood Mist Island wasn't peaceful these days. First, the Seiji imitated the Yushu clan and Blood Moon's methods. They swept the surrounding areas and went up the mountain. When the other factions saw that the Yushu clan, Blood Moon, and Seiji, the 3 strongest factions, gave up their territory and chose to go up the mountain, they were all a little panicked. They felt that something terrifying was going to happen in the inner area. However, they didn't dare to move their individual strength to the mountain. Thus, they joined forces and formed 2 alliances to force their way up the mountain. By now, 80% of the people on Blood Fog Island had gathered on the small mountain. Only a few people in the inner circle who were greedy for the next eruption of resources were still there. They even laughed at the people on the mountain for throwing away so many resources for nothing. For days later, they indeed waited for the eruption of resources. They could pick up all the resources as they wished. They were all incomparably excited. However, just as they were getting excited, the huge blood-colored light barrier covering the Blood Mist Islands suddenly twisted. The blood-colored light barrier kept twisting, and the area it covered was gradually shrinking. At the same time, the entire inner area trembled as if an earth dragon had flipped over. Countless huge cracks suddenly appeared. The people in the inner area didn't even have time to scream or call for help before they fell into a bottomless abyss. As for the people near the light barrier, they were directly sucked into the terrifying spatial fragments and turned into dust. The only area that wasn't affected was the small mountain. At this moment, the people who were already on the mountain had a look of horror on their faces. All of their faces were pale, and some of their legs were even trembling. In the midst of the collapse of heaven and earth, they were as weak as ants. Chapter 104. Everyone on the mountain was terrified, but at the same time, they were glad that they had made the right choice. They didn't lust after that little bit of cultivation resources, and because of this, they were able to preserve their precious lives. This time, the heavens collapse didn't last as long as the previous time. When everything returned to normal, only this small mountain was left on the Blood Fog Island. Perhaps the Blood Fog Island couldn't be called an island anymore. However, because the area had been greatly reduced, the fog on this small mountain had also become thicker. At a glance, one could only see about 300 to 400 feet away, and there were many trees blocking their vision. The fog had become thicker, and at the same time, the spiritual chi had become denser. The spiritual chi on the small mountain was now 3 times denser than before. As the spiritual chi became denser, their cultivation speed naturally increased, and a few people even broke through to the pure spirit realm on the spot. At this time, some people also thought about why the Yushu clan and Blood Moon had reacted in advance and moved to the mountain. There was only one reason, and that was that they had already known that the heavens collapse would happen again. However, if it were them, they definitely wouldn't do things so openly. Wasn't this the same as telling others that there would be a change in the inner region? The higher-ups of the various factions couldn't understand even if they racked their brains. At this time, in the Yushu clan's camp, the atmosphere was very lively. In fact, the Yushu clan didn't know that the heavens collapse would happen again, and everyone was just following orders. Although they all had doubts in their hearts, they all obediently kept their mouths shut and did what they were supposed to do. Not long ago, when the heavens collapse happened again, they finally understood that it was their clan master and deputy clan master who had saved them all. At this moment, whether it was the old people of the Yushu clan or the people who had surrendered from various factions, they all had endless respect for Yushu and Leng Shiqi. They also had a strong sense of belonging and security to the Yushu clan. In the largest tent of the Yushu clan, Yushu sat at the front, Leng Shiqi sat beside him, and 14 people stood in front of him. These 14 people were all spirit cultivators of the pure spirit realm. Yushu, on the other hand, was in high spirits. His spittle was flying everywhere as he said something along the lines of, "Follow me and you'll get to eat meat." Everyone else was looking at him with excitement. Leng Shiqi was the only one who had his arms crossed and was about to fall asleep. After a long while, Yushu's voice was almost hoarse from all the talking before the crowd dispersed. "Brother Dark Crow, what do you think of what I said? Do you feel like your whole body is filled with hot blood?" Yushu came over and asked excitedly. Leng Shiqi nodded politely. Seeing that Leng Shiqi didn't seem to be in high spirits, Yushu restrained his expression and asked seriously, "What do we do next?" "Wait." Leng Shiqi only said one word. "Wait? Do you think there will be any danger?" Yushu's expression froze. "That's right, I have a feeling that something will happen. Let everyone be alert and don't let their guard down. Don't worry, I will give the order. Also, I roar." However, before Yushu could finish his sentence, an earth-shattering roar suddenly came from an unknown place. Immediately after, dozens of roars rose and fell, forming waves of sound in the small mountain. Some people with low cultivation even held their ears in pain. Leng Shiqi and Yushu's expressions changed and they quickly rushed out of the tent. At this time, the people outside were all nervous. When they saw Leng Shiqi and Yushu come out, their expressions became better as if they had found their backbone. Yushu said in a deep voice, "It's demon beasts. So many demon beasts." Leng Shiqi's eyes focused and he channeled his spirit power into his eyes to look in a direction halfway up the mountain. However, the mist was too thick and he couldn't see anything clearly. That direction was where the first roar came from. He had only felt that kind of strong wave from the spiritual ruin beast king before. That meant that a rank 2 demon beast had appeared. Leng Shiqi thought to himself, which direction will it go first? Now, there were only 5 factions on Blood Mist Island. They were the Yushu clan, Blood Moon, Seiji, the 2 alliances, the Qinyan League, and the Triad. These 5 factions were scattered in 5 directions at the foot of the mountain. With the strength of these 5 factions, dealing with a few rank 1 demon beasts was still within the acceptable range. However, if they were attacked by a rank 2 demon beast, then they could only run away. That rank 2 demon beast was the biggest threat. The roars of the demon beasts gradually dissipated. Everyone waited vigilantly for a long time, but they didn't see any demon beasts coming over. Their hearts were beating like drums, and they were at a loss. Yushu asked doubtfully, "Why isn't there any movement?" "I don't know, but at least it's a good thing for us. Spread out all the pure spirit realm cultivators to patrol the surroundings. Everyone else, hurry up and cultivate. Throw in all the resources and strive to have a few more people break through to the pure spirit realm in the shortest time possible. I'm going out." After Leng Shiqi finished speaking, he directly disappeared into the thick fog. Yushu was stunned for a moment, then he followed Leng Shiqi's instructions. Leng Shiqi, on the other hand, carefully walked to the mountainside alone. No one knew when these demonic beasts would suddenly attack. It was like a sharp sword hanging over their heads, making them feel uneasy at all times. Leng Shiqi didn't like this feeling. He was skilled and bold enough to explore the demon beasts first. However, because the fog was too big and there were tall trees everywhere, Leng Shiqi's speed was not fast. After walking for a while, he felt that something was wrong. As he walked, he couldn't help but stop and then turn around. His right hand was already holding the hilt of his sword, but there was nothing behind him. "That's not right." Leng Shiqi frowned. He remembered that when he walked over, he passed by an unknown forked plant, but now that he turned around, there were 2 straight towering trees behind him. Leng Shiqi narrowed his eyes, and a hint of seriousness appeared in his eyes. Immediately, he stomped hard, creating a small pit under his feet, and then walked to the two towering trees. Ling Shiqi pulled out his spirit sword and flicked his wrist. The tip of the sword drew a mark on the trunk. Then he did not continue to go up. Instead, he walked down dozens of steps and then returned the way he came. When he came back and saw that the mark on the trunk was still there, he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He thought that there was still something like a maze in the fog. He secretly thought that he was overthinking it. However, when he continued to take a few steps forward, he was suddenly stunned. The small pit that he stepped on was gone. Chapter 105. Ling Shiqi noticed that the small hole had disappeared and his heart sank. He knew that he was no longer in the same place. Looks like the fog has not only blocked our vision, it has also messed up our sense of direction, Ling Shiqi thought to himself. However, Ling Shiqi did not panic. He raised his left hand and a faint light appeared in his palm. Then, he pushed his left hand and a strong wind blew out of his palm. It was the second-rank spiritual skill, Spirit Attack. Spirit Attack was a spiritual skill that did not have much power before it was fused with the attribute, but now it had a miraculous effect. The strong wind blew away the fog in a large area. Ling Shiqi hurriedly channeled his spiritual energy into his eyes and quickly observed the surrounding terrain. There. Ling Shiqi saw the small hole he had stepped on before and his eyes lit up. He roughly looked and saw that the small hole was not far away from him. It was just that the direction was a little off. It was not terrible to deviate a little. What was terrible was that if you deviated a little every time you walked, then you did not know where you would end up. Ling Shiqi hesitated for a while. It was still very troublesome to find the way back. In the end, he decided to continue forward. But from then on, Ling Shiqi would leave a small hole on the ground every few steps. Moreover, as long as he encountered a plant, he would mark it with a different number. In addition, every once in a while, he would use Spirit Attack to ensure that his direction was correct. In this way, Ling Shiqi walked for about a quarter of an hour. Suddenly, his feet moved and his body flashed. Almost at the same time, a ferocious mouth bit down on the spot where Ling Shiqi had been standing. Ling Shiqi turned his head and saw a brown python with its mouth wide open and fangs sticking out its tongue at him. That was close. Ling Shiqi was secretly sweating in his heart because his perception was a little chaotic in this thick fog. He was almost ambushed by a demon beast before he realized it. Fortunately, it was him. If it was an ordinary spirit cultivator of the pure spirit realm, he would have already been ambushed by the giant python. Ling Shiqi snorted coldly. He held the spirit sword in his hand and tapped it a few times. Several invisible sword chi suddenly shot out. Although the giant python could not see the sword chi, it instinctively sensed danger. Its huge body agilely rolled and dodged the two sword chis. Even so, 3 to 4 sword chis still managed to cut through the giant python's body. Hiss, hiss. The huge python hissed a few times in pain. Its wild nature flared up, and it twisted its body to bite over. Ling Shiqi's expression did not change. He clenched his fist, and the spirit sword in his hand disappeared and turned into a long spear. This was a second-grade spirit spear that the Yushu clan had plundered. Ling Shiqi pointed his spear, and a strong fighting spirit suddenly erupted from his body. His aura became extremely domineering. He raised his spear, and the tip of the spear glowed with spiritual light as he charged forward. It was the second-grade spirit technique, formation-breaking tyrant spear. The spear and the python collided in the blink of an eye. However, at this moment, Ling Shiqi's body suddenly sank a little, and he narrowly dodged the python's attack from below. At the same time, the spear stabbed upwards. Puchi. The spear stabbed out and directly pierced through the giant python. Ling Shiqi patted the bottom of the spear, and the spear immediately pierced through the giant python and flew into the air. In the blink of an eye, Ling Shiqi's figure suddenly disappeared, and then strangely appeared in the air. He turned around and held onto the spear. With a walla sound, Ling Shiqi held the spear and drew a huge cross light before smashing it down again. The tip of the spear pierced the giant python again with a crosslight, nailing the giant python to the ground. Leng Shiqi gently landed and stood on the tip of the spear. His ink-flowing robe fluttered in the wind, and his eyes were full of cold killing intent. The giant python kept twisting its huge body, but it couldn't break free. It could only twist its body and swing its tail. Leng Shiqi didn't even turn his head. He held the sword in his right hand, and when the snake tail was about to hit him, he instantly cut the snake tail in half. A pillar of scarlet spurted out. Leng Shiqi withdrew his sword and formed a seal, and the pillar of blood was gathered together. Not long after, the giant python's body shriveled up, and there was no more sound. After collecting the demon blood and selling the giant python's body to the system, Leng Shiqi looked around and muttered, "It seems that this place is near the mountainside." Then Leng Shiqi withdrew his spear, made a mark, and continued to walk forward. Unexpectedly, not long after he walked, he encountered another demon beast. When the demon beast saw someone, it immediately rushed over with bloodshot eyes. But this time, Leng Shiqi didn't fight. Instead, he followed the marks he made and ran back. The demon beast chased closely behind him. Every time it was about to catch up to Leng Shiqi, he would use the confusion footwork to open up the distance. Leng Shiqi silently calculated the distance as he ran. Not long after, the demon beast suddenly stopped chasing. It stood in place and roared crazily. Seeing this, Leng Shiqi's heart skipped a beat as if he had thought of something. Then, he walked towards the demonic beast step by step. When Leng Shiqi took 8 steps, the demon beast bared its fangs and pounced at him again. He lightly tapped his foot and floated back 3 meters. That demonic beast stopped again. Interesting. Could it be that there's some invisible restriction here? Leng Shiqi could tell that the demonic beast seemed to have a limited range of movement. He guessed that the range should be that it couldn't leave the mountainside. With this information, Leng Shiqi's heart calmed down a bit. He immediately went back the way he came. In the end, it took some twists and turns before he finally returned to the camp. When Leng Shiqi returned to the camp, Yushu immediately greeted him and asked, "Brother Dark Crow, are you okay?" Yushu didn't immediately ask about the demon beast. Instead, he was concerned about Leng Shiqi's safety. This surprised Leng Shiqi a bit. He first shook his head and said, "I'm fine. Let's talk inside." The two walked into the tent. Leng Shiqi directly said, "The fog in the Blood Mist Island is a bit strange. If you go out rashly, you might get lost. In the future, when you send people out to collect food and water, be careful. It's best to make a mark. Also, don't worry too much about the demon beast. They shouldn't come down in a short period of time. During this time, everyone must cultivate and improve their strength as much as possible before the demon beast attacks." Yushu nodded to show that he understood. Then, he went out to make arrangements. Leng Shiqi returned to his tent and calmed down to carefully refine his spirit power. He used external objects to break through to the 7th level of the pure spirit realm. His foundation was a bit unstable. Now, he had to slowly purify his spirit power. After everything settled down, the entire Yushu clan set off a cultivation frenzy. Other than those who were patrolling and collecting resources, everyone else was working hard to cultivate. These peaceful days lasted for 9 days. After 9 days, the entire Blood Mist Island was shrouded in the sound of the demon beast. Everyone knew that the demon beast had come. Chapter 106. Roar, roar, roar. The roars of the demonic beasts were endless. Everyone from the Yushu clan stood there in an orderly manner, with nearly 30 people standing at the front. These people were all spirit cultivators of the pure spirit realm. In the 9 heavens, Yushu could be considered to have hardened his heart, throwing down all of his cultivation resources, and even passing down a rank 2 cultivation method. All spirit cultivators of the 9th level of the spirit gathering realm could cultivate at will. In addition, the spirit energy of the Blood Mist Island was more than 3 times denser than before. In just 9 days, more than 10 people had broken through to the pure spirit realm. Hua Lingling, blood is no different, Mu 21, and the others had all reached the 4th level of the pure spirit realm and could take charge of things on their own. Yushu was still standing at the front, holding 2 daggers of different shapes in his hands, his expression solemn. Only Leng Shiqi leaned against a log with his arms crossed. Because he was wearing a mask, his expression could not be seen. But from his fingers that were involuntarily tapping, it could be seen that his heart was not calm. Of course, what Leng Shiqi cared about was not the rank 1 demonic beasts, but the rank 2 demonic beasts. Which side would the rank 2 demonic beasts attack first? No one knew. Time passed bit by bit, and the roars of the demonic beasts slowly approached. Everyone's hearts were in their throats. Finally, a demonic beast appeared in everyone's sight. Then, the 2nd, the 3rd, until the 13th demonic beast appeared. A total of 13 demonic beasts. The spirit cultivators of the pure spirit realm, including Yushu, all turned pale and secretly swallowed their saliva. The spirit cultivators of the spirit gathering realm behind them turned pale with fright, and some of them even trembled and could not control their legs. Yushu glanced at Leng Shiqi with a questioning look in his eyes. Leng Shiqi nodded silently. Yushu took a deep breath and shouted with all his strength, "Everyone, divide into 10 groups, each group will fight against 1 demonic beast. I and the vice leader will deal with the rest. Remember, only by fighting with all your strength will you have a chance of survival. If anyone escapes, kill them on the spot. Fight! Fight!" Everyone shouted this word at the top of their lungs, and immediately took the initiative to charge out. The Yushu clan's campsite was only built with trees. It was completely useless against a first-stage demonic beast. It was better to charge out directly. When everyone rushed out of the campsite, they tacitly divided into 10 groups, each of them facing a demonic beast. Yushu rushed towards the demonic beast alone. As for Leng Shiqi, he unsheathed his saber and slashed out nearly 100 saber shadows that enveloped the 2 demonic beasts. The battle had begun. Rank 1 beasts were no longer a threat to the Leng Shiqi, even if there were 2 of them. However, Leng Shiqi was not in a hurry to kill the 2 beasts. He only used a few low-level sword techniques to entangle the beasts while observing the others' battles. Yushu was fighting alone with a giant white-furred wolf. At present, Yushu still had the upper hand. Among the others, only Hua Lingling and the other 2 were barely holding on. As for the rest, they were completely unable to fight against the first-stage demonic beasts. Every now and then, someone would die tragically under the claws of the demonic beasts. In the blink of an eye, more than a dozen people had fallen to the ground dead. Leng Shiqi knew that he could not delay any longer. His saber suddenly became fierce. His body was like a phantom, and with the shadow of his saber, he cut open wounds on the demonic beasts' bodies. The 2 demonic beasts suddenly roared, and immediately their bodies bloomed with a dazzling bloody light. Seeing this familiar scene, Leng Shiqi's heart skipped a beat. He knew that they were about to mutate. Leng Shiqi appeared beside the demonic beasts in a flash, and in the next moment, he slashed out 2 saber shadows. Pu, the 2 demonic beasts fell to the ground. The demonic beasts shrouded in bloody light had just begun to mutate when they were both beheaded by Leng Shiqi. Unfortunately, he could not refine the demonic blood in front of everyone, nor could he deal with the demonic beasts' corpses. He felt a little lost. Next, Leng Shiqi looked left and right, then rushed to Yushu's side. However, when he was halfway there, he found that the demonic beast that Yushu was fighting was also emitting bloody light. Yushu naturally knew what this meant. With a fierce look on his face, he clenched his sabers and rushed directly in front of the demonic beast. Then, he squatted and immediately jumped up. At the same time, his body spun rapidly. The 2 sabers in his hands burst out with saber shadows. From afar, it looked like a small tornado formed by saber shadows. Countless saber shadows fell on the demonic beast's body. In the blink of an eye, its flesh was torn open, as if it was dying of 1,000 cuts. Leng Shiqi, who was halfway there, suddenly stopped in his tracks. Unknowingly, Yushu's strength had become so strong. At this time, Yushu turned his head slightly tiredly and smiled at Leng Shiqi, then immediately rushed to another demonic beast. Leng Shiqi nodded slightly and was about to deal with the other demonic beasts. Suddenly, all the demonic beasts paused in unison, then roared towards the sky. The people of the Yushu clan were also stunned, but they did not take the opportunity to attack the demonic beasts. Instead, they all turned their heads to look in one direction. Because there was a strange demonic beast slowly walking over. This demonic beast looked like a giant crocodile, but its body was upright. The scales on its body were dark silver, and there seemed to be a faint flicker of fire on the scales. The most terrifying thing was that this demonic beast's aura was much stronger than those rank 1 demonic beasts. From afar, one could feel an invisible pressure pressing down on one's body. This was a rank 2 demonic beast. Silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. The moment the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile appeared, everyone from the Yushu clan felt their hearts sink, and a chill ran down their spines. A sense of despair rose from the bottom of their hearts. Just these rank 1 demonic beasts were already difficult for them to deal with, let alone a rank 2 demonic beast. It could even be said that those spirit cultivators in the spirit assembly realm did not even have the qualifications to face a rank 2 demonic beast. Leng Shiqi's eyes could not help but twitch a few times. At this moment, he still clearly remembered that Yushu had said that rank 2 demonic beasts would definitely not come here. He turned his head to look at Yushu, and found that Yushu's face was already as black as iron. He really did not expect to be targeted by a rank 2 demonic beast. One must know that there were still 5 factions on the Blood Mist Island, and everyone had a 20% chance. However, the Yushu clan just happened to bump into them. However, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile did not care about what they thought. When it saw so many people, it immediately opened its bloody mouth and pounced towards the nearest person. That person was a newly advanced spirit cultivator in the pure spirit stage. Facing such a terrifying silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, he subconsciously wanted to escape, but his legs did not listen to him at this time. Seeing this scene, Yushu immediately rushed over. Leng Shiqi also moved his feet and quickly rushed over. However, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was not slow either. In the blink of an eye, it rushed in front of that person and bit down. That person only had time to block in front of him with his weapon, but it was a pity that the weapon broke in half in an instant. A spirit cultivator in the pure spirit stage could not even block one attack from the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile and was torn apart. Chapter 107. In the blink of an eye, the silver-scaled fire-armored alligator had killed a spirit cultivator of the pure spirit realm, casting a shadow over everyone's heart. There were even some who had the thought of escaping, but the other rank 1 demonic beasts had started to bite them crazily, not giving them the chance to escape. At this time, Yushu had already rushed over. He was not afraid as he raised his dual blades and suddenly slashed out 2 shocking blade auras. These blade auras were only slightly weaker than Leng Shiqi's. However, what no one expected was that when these 2 blade auras slashed onto the silver-scaled fire-armored alligator's back, they only created 2 rows of dazzling sparks. When the sparks dissipated, the silver-scaled fire-armored alligator was safe and sound. There were only 2 shallow scratches on its back. Yushu, bang! The silver-scaled fire-armored alligator swung its tail, and Yushu immediately spat out blood and flew out, crashing into a thick tree trunk. How can I fight this? Yushu said weakly. All of this naturally fell into Leng Shiqi's eyes. He was also secretly amazed at the silver-scaled fire-armored alligator's strong defense. However, he still continued to rush over, because at this time, only he could deal with the silver-scaled fire-armored alligator. Leng Shiqi stepped on the black fog and his body moved continuously. After dodging 2 attacks from the silver-scaled fire-armored alligator, he found an opportunity and waved his battle blade, causing a magnificent crescent blade aura to surge out. The blade aura was so bright that it even dispersed the surrounding fog. The blade aura ruthlessly slashed onto the silver-scaled fire-armored alligator's legs. Yushu stared at the blade aura with a trace of envy and hope in his eyes. He was envious because he could not slash out such a blade aura. He hoped that Leng Shiqi could deal with the rank 2 demonic beast. The saber light slashed down and made a strange sound. When the saber light dissipated, it was clear that Leng Shiqi's saber had left a deep cut on the silver scale fire armored alligator's legs. Leng Shiqi could not help but frown when he saw this. The defensive power of this silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was far beyond his imagination. It was even stronger than the spiritual ruin beast king. Leng Shiqi's waning moon rapid light slash was able to cut off the 4 claws of the mutated demon beast. Now that Leng Shiqi's cultivation had improved greatly, it could only slightly injure the silver-scale fire-armored crocodile. One could imagine how strong the silver-scale fire-armored crocodile's defense was. Leng Shiqi hurriedly retreated after slashing with his saber. The moment he retreated, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's thick arm slashed down, leaving a deep and long claw mark on the ground. Leng Shiqi's clothes fluttered in the wind created by the demonic beasts. At this moment, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was glaring at Leng Shiqi with its blood-red eyes. It wanted to tear him into pieces. Leng Shiqi secretly smiled when he saw this. Then, he lightly tapped his foot and floated back. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile roared and leaped forward. However, Leng Shiqi dodged again and again. He turned his hand and slashed with another wind slash. Unfortunately, this perfect wind slash could not break through the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's defense. It only left a deeper mark than Yushu's. However, this was enough to enrage the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, causing it to chase after Leng Shiqi. Under his guidance, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile gradually left the camp. Seeing that Leng Shiqi had lured the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile away, everyone secretly sighed in relief. Although rank 1 demonic beasts were very dangerous, at least they still had some confidence. However, facing a rank 2 demonic beast, they were in despair. Yushu continuously stuffed a few pills into his mouth and led everyone to continue resisting the remaining 10 rank 1 demonic beasts. Leng Shiqi gradually lured the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile away. During this process, Leng Shiqi also discovered that although the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's running speed was not very fast, its explosive speed in a short distance was very shocking. Leng Shiqi had almost been caught twice. Fortunately, he had injured the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's legs with his saber. Otherwise, it would be hard to say if he could lure it out safely. It's about time. After a while, Leng Shiqi looked around and felt that they were far enough away. He immediately stopped. Then, he suddenly turned around and a long spear suddenly appeared in his hand. He turned around and stabbed. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile only had Leng Shiqi in its eyes. It did not even look at the long spear and still opened its bloody mouth to pounce. Ding! The tip of the long spear pierced the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, but there was a sound of metal clashing. The entire long spear even bent, as if it would break in a few breaths' time. This spear did not cause any damage to the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, but it did block the crocodile. Leng Shiqi clenched his left hand into a fist. Suddenly, there was a faint sound of a tiger's roar. A terrifying force condensed on his fist. He suddenly punched out. The fist was like a fierce tiger treading on waves as it smashed into the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's chest. The fierce tiger treading on waves fist contained both internal and external forces. The external force caused the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body to shrink a little. The internal force mercilessly rushed into its body and crazily destroyed its flesh. After hitting the target, Leng Shiqi did not dare to be greedy and immediately dodged. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile roared in pain. The silver scales all over its body lifted up, forming a barb-like existence. Seeing this, Leng Shiqi knew that it was not good. He felt that it was a little troublesome. Originally, he wanted to imitate the battle with the spiritual ruin beast king and use the fierce tiger treading on waves fist to break its defense. Then, he would use the overflowing meridian sword chi to seal its meridians and slowly wear it down to death. But he did not expect that this demonic beast would have such a method. This disrupted his plan. Thus, the killing intent in Lang Shiqi's heart subsided a little. If he could not use the fierce tiger treading on Wave's fist, then the chances of killing this beast would be much smaller. Unless he used the beast chi battle runes to face it head-on, but the price would be too great. Furthermore, he might not be able to kill the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. Lang Shiqi hesitated for a moment, but still decided not to take the risk. He only needed to stall the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. The Yushu clan had more than 100 people. Among them, there were close to 30 pure spirit realm cultivators. In addition, they also had a few trump cards to deal with the remaining 10 demonic beasts. However, deaths and injuries were inevitable. After that, Lang Shiqi immediately changed his strategy. He no longer faced the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile head-on. He maintained the ghost parade and wandered around. Whenever the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile approached, he would use the confusion footwork to increase the distance between them. From then on, a chase began. Lang Shiqi's cultivation was at the 7th level of the pure spirit realm. He had a lot of spirit energy. Furthermore, he had some pills to recover spirit energy. He did not need to worry about the consumption of spirit energy for a short period of time. However, there was a problem. At the beginning, Lang Shiqi could still barely remember the surrounding environment and direction. However, as the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile approached again and again, Lang Shiqi had to be completely focused. He did not dare to be distracted and gradually lost his sense of direction. One man and one beast quickly shuttled through the dense forest. After about 15 minutes, Lang Shiqi only had half of his spirit energy left. He estimated that the distance was far enough. Just as he was about to use the Hand of Earth to get rid of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, he suddenly heard the sound of intense fighting not far away. Lang Shiqi's heart moved and he immediately rushed in that direction. Chapter 108. Currently, there were only 5 forces left on the Blood Mist Island, and the Triad was one of them. This alliance was made up of 3 forces. Before the arrival of the second heavenly collapse, the strongest forces of the Yushu clan all went up the mountain, which made them a little anxious. They also guessed that there was something fishy, but their respective forces were not enough to fight against the monsters on the mountain. In the end, they decided to join forces and form an alliance to fight against the monsters. Facts proved that their decision was very wise. Today, they were also besieged by more than 10 monsters. Fortunately, they had a lot of people. Although they suffered heavy casualties, they had already killed more than half of the monsters. Seeing that victory was in front of them, their morale was greatly boosted, and they all gave it their all. However, at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Only a few people noticed it, but they all thought that their eyes were playing tricks on them, so they did not pay too much attention. But what everyone didn't expect was that a demonic beast followed closely behind, and it was a rank 2 demonic beast. This was naturally the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile that was chasing after Lang Shiqi. Lang Shiqi originally planned to escape directly, but he accidentally came to the Triad, so he thought of a way to lure the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile over. After he came here, he immediately drilled into the ground and sank deep, afraid that the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile would find his aura. When the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile rushed over, it suddenly lost Lang Shiqi's figure and became even more furious. It immediately roared towards the sky. Its roar that contained anger immediately attracted everyone's attention. At this moment, whether it was the cultivators of the Triad or the rank 1 monsters, they were all intimidated by the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's roar. The blood in the eyes of the rank 1 monsters became denser, and the cultivators of the Triad were all ashen, not knowing what to do. Originally, these rank 1 monsters had already caused them to suffer heavy casualties, but now, a rank 2 monster suddenly appeared. Especially the Alliance Master of Triad, Extreme Evil. When he felt the terrifying aura of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, even with his cultivation at the 6th level of the pure spirit realm, he broke out in cold sweat, let alone the others. To the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, since it couldn't find the person who injured it, as long as it was a human, it would tear them apart. The silver-scaled fire-armored alligator arched its body and shot out like a sharp arrow. It was like a tiger entering a flock of sheep. In the blink of an eye, it tore several people into pieces. Instantly, blood splattered everywhere. Seeing this scene, who would still dare to fight it? The sudden appearance of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile broke the psychological defense of the crowd. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 people fled. Extreme Evil immediately raged, "Idiots, a bunch of idiots. The faster you run, the faster you die." As soon as these people fled, the Tier 1 demonic beasts that were originally suppressed went berserk in the blink of an eye. It was hard to suppress them anymore. The entire battle seemed to be in a state of complete defeat. Extreme Evil watched as his subordinates died one after another. Especially those who fled. How could they outrun the demonic beasts? Instead, they died even faster. However, Extreme Evil still didn't give up. He shouted, "Don't hold back anymore. Use all your trump cards. Who knows, you might still have a chance." After saying that, Extreme Evil slid out an icy blue needle from his sleeve and shot it out. The speed of the ice needle was extremely fast. It just happened to catch the moment the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile stopped and shot it. The moment the ice needle reached the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, it didn't pierce into it. Instead, it strangely turned into a shocking cold air and swallowed it. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body was suddenly covered with a layer of ice. Furthermore, the ice was getting thicker and thicker, sealing it in ice. At the same time, the two people beside Extreme Evil also took out 2 items with a pained expression. One was a light crossbow. On the light crossbow were 2 crossbow bolts, one black and one white. When the crossbow bolts were shot, they actually intertwined with each other in mid-air and turned into a black and white light beam. The other person took out an oval-shaped container. He threw the container into mid-air. Numerous colorful little insects scattered out from the container and crawled towards the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was currently sealed in ice. However, a layer of faint silver flame suddenly emerged from its body. The ice on the surface of its body began to melt rapidly. It seemed to have sensed a threat and tried its best to move its body a little. PFFF. In the end, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile moved a little. That black and white crossbow bolt pierced into the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's lower abdomen. Immediately after, the 2 opposing forces suddenly exploded. In the blink of an eye, a large area of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's scales exploded, revealing the flesh underneath. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile wanted to howl in pain, but the layer of ice on its head still sealed it in ice. It could only barely open its mouth, but no sound came out. Right after the explosion, hundreds of little insects crawled onto its body. Many of them directly drilled into its body through the wound on its lower abdomen and mercilessly tore apart its flesh. Roar! Bang! The silver flame on the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body suddenly surged and instantly melted all the ice crystals. The silver flame was still incessantly burning those little insects on its body. The corpses of the insects fell down in batches. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's pair of blood-red eyes stared at Extreme Evil and the other 2. Its eyes flickered with a crazy killing intent. At this moment, Extreme Evil and the other 2's hearts were already dead. They had joined hands and used their strongest trump card, but they still couldn't do anything to the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. They knew that this was not something they could deal with. Sigh, run, run. Run as many as you can. Extreme Evil sighed deeply. It was as if he had used up all his strength to finish this sentence. Even he, the Alliance leader, had spoken. This time, no one dared to stay. The dozens of people immediately scattered like birds and beasts. The rest was a massacre by the demonic beasts. After a moment, this place had become a scene of carnage. Fresh blood dyed the ground red. Broken limbs were everywhere. The remaining few demonic beasts, including the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, were excitedly eating. At this moment, the scales on the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body had returned to its original state. Moreover, it looked a little weak. Just as it was replenishing its strength, the ground under its feet suddenly softened. Immediately, a huge fist with an incomparably turbulent force drilled out from the ground and hit the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's lower abdomen. Bang! A loud sound rang out. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was directly blasted into the air by this punch. Traces of fishy blood flowed out from its mouth. At the place where the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was standing just now, there was an additional figure. This person's appearance was clearly that of a 12 or 13-year-old youth. However, he was as tall as an adult. Moreover, his entire body was bulging with bulging muscles. A tyrannical aura was emitted from his body. A faint trace of blood-red light appeared in his eyes. This person was naturally Leng Shiqi, who had activated the Beast Origin battle pattern. In the next moment, Leng Shiqi instantly disappeared. When they looked again, he had already appeared behind the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. Another punch landed. Chapter 109. Thanks to my book friends, Not by Xiao Jun, for their recommendation, and Cute Gugugu and Pomegranate Mama for their support. Leng Shiqi, who had activated the Beast Origin battle pattern, attacked with another tiger wave stomping fist on its back. With a boom, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was smashed into the ground by a huge force, creating a large crater. The scales on its back were also cracked. Leng Shiqi was still in the air. He held the sword in his right hand and the spear in his left hand. With a shake of the spear, he drew a huge cross in the air and fiercely stabbed down. At the same time, he pointed his spirit sword and a faint blue pattern flashed on the blade. Then Leng Shiqi turned into several afterimages and stabbed down. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was hit by the tiger wave stomping fist twice in a row. Although the external force didn't cause much damage to it, the internal force that rushed into its body was constantly destroying its bones and meridians, making it unable to get up for a while. At this moment, the heavy cross spear accurately stabbed into the back of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, completely tearing apart its defense. Almost at the same time, several invisible sword chi surged out and entered its body from the wound, instantly sealing all the spirit power in its abdomen. After the sword chi, there were several sharp sword rays. With a pu-pu sound, the wound on the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's abdomen was already open and blood was flowing out. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile roared in extreme pain and a layer of silver flames appeared all over its body. Leng Shiqi already knew it would be like this. After using chaotic blossom lust, he continuously retreated. Immediately, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile crazily rushed over. Even the other rank 1 monsters rushed over and completely surrounded Leng Shiqi. But Leng Shiqi didn't panic and immediately changed his sword for a saber. As several monstrous beasts pounced on him, he softly spat out 2 words, "Ice spread." In an instant, a thick chill rose from Leng Shiqi's feet. In the blink of an eye, it condensed into a layer of ice and quickly spread out. Those rank 1 demonic beasts were instantly frozen after coming into contact with the ice. However, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body emitted silver flames. When the ice surged up and came into contact with the flames, it melted. Sizzling sounds were unceasingly heard, and a thick fog was emitted. Leng Shiqi knew that this bit of ice wouldn't be able to seal the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, but he didn't plan on sealing it. He just wanted the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile to keep burning with silver flames. This was because he had discovered that the silver-scaled fire-armored alligator's spirit force and physical strength were rapidly being consumed when the silver flames burned. Most importantly, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's defense was at its weakest at this moment. With the help of the thick water vapor, Ling Shiqi displayed the ghost parade and confusion footwork to the extreme. In a few flashes, he appeared behind the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. Immediately, a magnificent crescent saber aura suddenly appeared, dispersing all the water vapor. At the same time, it completely engulfed the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. And Ling Shiqi still attacked the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's wound. After 2 breaths, the saber aura dissipated. Ling Shiqi's saber was deeply embedded in the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body, almost cutting it in half. However, Ling Shiqi was still not at ease. He withdrew his saber and punched the tiger-treading wave fist on the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's back. He also used the rebound force to retreat. After retreating, Ling Shiqi quickly formed seals and pulled his arms. A large amount of blood flew out from the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's wound and gathered in the air. After a dozen breaths, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile finally staggered and fell to the ground, no longer breathing. Seeing this scene, Ling Shiqi secretly sighed in relief. He also stopped the seals in his hand and changed to another kind of seal. Then his body slowly returned to its original state, followed by a strong sense of fatigue and soreness that swept through his body. Ling Shiqi's face instantly turned pale. He staggered and almost lost his balance. He hurriedly took out a few pills and swallowed them. Only then did he feel a little better. But at this time, the ice crystals on the other rank 1 monsters began to crack, and more cracks appeared. It looked like they were about to break out of the ice. Ling Shiqi snorted softly and immediately flashed out with the spirit sword in his hand. Then there was an endless, crack sound. This was not the sound of the monsters breaking out of the ice, but the sound of Ling Shiqi killing the monsters with the ice crystals. In less than 5 minutes, all the rank 1 monsters were dead. Ling Shiqi's forehead was covered in a layer of cold sweat. Then he arrived next to the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body and stabbed it into its head. A light silver monster core was taken out, and Ling Shiqi's face immediately lit up. In today's battle, he had deeply experienced the terror of the beast origin battle pattern. Not only did it provide Ling Shiqi with a huge amount of power, but it also gave him a powerful burst of power. Without the beast origin battle pattern, it would have been impossible for him to kill the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. According to the demonic beast origin method, once he reached the spirit transformation realm, he would be able to refine the beast origin battle pattern again. Ling Shiqi was looking forward to it because the monster core of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was likely to be refined into a beast origin battle pattern that could increase his defense. However, now was not the time for him to look forward to the future. After he looked around and saw that there was no one around, he sank into the ground and began to recover his spirit energy. After he recovered his spirit energy, he collected the blood of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile and the other monsters and sold the corpses to the system. Finally, he fumbled his way back to the Yushu clan's camp. When Ling Shiqi returned, what he saw was also a hellish scene. At this time, the Yushu clan's camp was already in a mess. Blood had already dyed the ground red, and there were corpses everywhere. There were both spirit cultivators and monsters. Moreover, there was an aura of death everywhere. Even those who had survived were all lifeless. Ling Shiqi scanned the corpses of the monsters and counted a total of 13. Seeing that the monsters were completely annihilated, he felt relieved. However, the Yushu clan's situation was not good. Originally, there were more than 100 people in the clan, but now, there were only 40 to 50 people left. In this battle, more than half of the people were sacrificed. Almost all of the remaining people were injured, and there were even a few who were on the verge of death. It was unknown if they could be saved. Seeing that Ling Shiqi had returned, everyone looked at him gratefully. If he had not lured the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile away, they did not know how many of them would have survived. At this time, Yushu, who was covered in injuries, was still trying his best to comfort everyone and instruct them to deal with the corpses. Seeing that Ling Shiqi had returned, he felt relieved and nodded at him. Ling Shiqi did not say anything and directly went forward to help everyone deal with the battlefield. This time, they finally made it through. Chapter 110. In the blink of an eye, it had been 3 months since the last siege of the demonic beasts. Although there were some waves and tribulations in these 3 months, everyone's strength was rapidly increasing and they managed to survive. Of course, casualties were still inevitable. Currently, the Blood Fog Island only had the Yushu clan, the Blood Moon, the Seiji, and the Qingyan League. The total number of people in these 4 forces was only a little more than 100. From more than 10,000 people to more than 100 people now, only a year and a half had passed. The Yushu clan had the most people among the 4 forces. After the battle 3 months ago, although the Yushu clan only had a little more than 40 people left, they had also accepted some people from the triad. After another 3 months of losses, there were still more than 40 people left. At this time, the Yushu clan's camp was no longer at the foot of the mountain, but halfway up the mountain. This was because the blood firmament had been slowly shrinking all this time. The area below the foot of the mountain had long disappeared. If this continued, it wouldn't be long before they had nowhere to go. From the halfway up the mountain, there was only the mysterious blood tower left. People from various forces had gone to check it and found out that the blood tower was actually very huge. Although it only had 5 floors, it was at least 200 to 300 feet high. Moreover, there was a door on all 4 sides of the blood fog tower, but the shape of each door was not the same. No one knew the purpose of each door. It was a pity that the blood tower was surrounded by a huge blood light screen, so they couldn't investigate it at close range. However, everyone also discovered that this blood light screen was gradually fading. They believed that it wouldn't be long before it dissipated. This also meant that when the blood firmament at the outermost layer became smaller and smaller, they would have to enter the blood tower. Perhaps this blood-red tower was their final test. At this time, in the Yushu clan's temporary camp, other than a few people patrolling, everyone else was diligently cultivating. Moreover, as far as the eye could see, everyone's cultivation was at the pure spirit realm. Now, the spirit chi on Blood Mist Island was so rich that it could be touched with one's hand. As long as one's aptitude was passable, all of them had broken through to the pure spirit realm. In fact, most of them were at the middle stage of the pure spirit realm. As for Hua Lingling, Mu 21, and Blood is no different, the oldest batch of pure spirit realm spirit cultivators, they were all at the late stage of the pure spirit realm. As for Leng Shiqi and Yushu, their cultivations were shockingly already at the peak of the 9th level of the pure spirit realm. However, the 2 of them didn't feel that their cultivation speed was fast at all. Because just a few days ago, they had received news that Delta Origi had broken through to the spirit transformation realm. The news of the Delta Origi breaking through to the spirit transformation realm spread like wildfire. It was as if there was a mountain pressing down on everyone's hearts. Especially for those who were at the late stage of the pure spirit realm, it was a huge blow. They knew best that the more they cultivated, the more difficult it was to advance. Just the bottleneck of the 8th and 9th level of the pure spirit realm was enough to block them. When they thought that someone had actually broken through to the spirit transformation realm, they felt that their hard work in cultivation was all for naught in the end. In the end, everyone could only attribute Delta Origi's breakthrough to her heaven-defying aptitude. This was the so-called comparisons are odious. However, only Leng Shiqi knew that the reason why Delta Origi was able to break through to the spirit transformation realm so quickly was not only because of her superb cultivation aptitude, but also because she possessed a rank 4 cultivation method. That rank 4 cultivation method was obtained from the puppet battle in the wetland. This was the answer that Leng Shiqi had exchanged with information later. Delta Origi's breakthrough also brought him a lot of pressure. It has to be said that Leng Shiqi had not slacked off in his cultivation for the past 3 months. Moreover, he had never stopped consuming pills and spirit stones. In addition, he would refine a mass of monster blood every few days. He had broken through from the 8th level of the pure spirit realm to the 9th level with the help of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's monster blood. Otherwise, it would have taken him more than 10 days to break through. In fact, Leng Shiqi was already at the peak of the pure spirit realm a month ago. However, because he had relied on external help to break through, when he touched the barrier of the spirit transformation realm, he knew that his foundation was a little unstable. If he did not properly purify his spirit force, he was afraid that he would not be able to break through to the spirit transformation realm for a long time. Therefore, in the following month, he had been purifying his spirit force, causing Yushu's cultivation to gradually catch up with him. On this day, Ling Shiqi looked inwardly at the spirit force in his sea of qi. Every strand of spirit force was incomparably pure, and he finally smiled. It took me a whole month to finally purify all my spirit force to the extreme. Fortunately, nothing too dangerous happened this month. Ling Shiqi whispered to himself. Then Ling Shiqi took out a fist-sized crystal ball from the system space. His eyes flashed with excitement and anticipation. This crystal ball was one of the rewards from the spiritual ruins. It was also the best reward that Ling Shiqi felt was the experience ball. If something like the experience ball was used in the game, it could directly give a large amount of experience to level up. If it was used in the real world, it would give a huge amount of spirit force. This was the kind of spirit force that could directly increase one's cultivation. Moreover, it was exceptionally pure, so there was no need to worry about leaving any hidden dangers. Ling Shiqi had not used this thing until now because he wanted to break through to the spirit transformation realm. That's right, Ling Shiqi was preparing to break through to the next realm, the spirit transformation realm. In the cultivation system, the pure spirit realm was a realm that opened up the spirit force in the sea of qi. The spirit transformation realm was the process of turning the spirit force in the sea of qi into mist, and the mist into the sea. In order to break through from the pure spirit realm to the spirit transformation realm, the spirit force in the body must be condensed into mist. Ling Shiqi cultivated 2 rank 3 cultivation methods at the same time, so he knew that there were 2 ways to break through. The method recorded in the demonic beast technique was more violent. It was to directly compress the sea of qi and turn it into mist to break through. Although this was simple, the process was very dangerous. If one was not careful, it would cause the sea of qi to become turbulent. In the most serious case, the sea of qi would collapse, causing one's cultivation to fall back to the spirit gathering realm. The other rank 3 cultivation method, Moonlight Cloud Codex, had a more smooth method. Ling Shiqi thought about it and decided to play it safe and use the method of the Moonlight Cloud Codex to break through. After all, the spirit force in the experience ball in his hand was very large and very pure. There was no need for him to take the risk. Since he had decided, Ling Shiqi immediately adjusted his state and crushed the experience ball. Immediately after, the experience ball instantly turned into a huge ball of spirit qi that gently wrapped Ling Shiqi. Ling Shiqi suddenly felt countless gentle spirit qi coming from his limbs and bones, making his whole body feel very comfortable. Ling Shiqi smoothly mobilized this spirit qi to break through the bottleneck of the spirit transformation realm again and again. During the process of breaking through this time, Ling Shiqi did not feel a lot of pain. Instead, the process was quite smooth. About an hour later, Ling Shiqi's body vaguely made a sound as if something had broken. Immediately, Ling Shiqi's aura suddenly surged and the ink-flowing clothes on his body began to move. Waves of invisible spiritual pressure spread out, setting off bursts of wind and waves. Ling Shiqi abruptly opened his eyes, and 2 dazzling lights flashed through them. His cultivation was already at the spirit transformation realm. Chapter 111. Ling Shiqi gently clenched his fist, feeling the majestic power in his body, and finally laughed. Breaking through to the spirit transformation realm at this critical moment gave him more confidence to survive. At this moment, a line of words appeared before his eyes. The system is about to be upgraded. It will take 3 natural days. During the upgrade, the system will not be available. Seeing this message, Ling Shiqi suddenly realized that he had not drawn a prize for a long time. The last time he had drawn a prize was when he was preparing to deal with the Belichuan and the others' joint attack. Moreover, after a long period of accumulation, Ling Shiqi now had more than 500 system coins. However, he had not used them for the lucky draw because the basic prizes were not very useful to him. He still had a certain level of expectation for the system upgrade this time. He hoped that after the upgrade, there would be a higher level of lucky draw, and he also looked forward to the opening of some subsidiary system. After all, the system backpack that appeared after the last system upgrade was a great help to him. Not only could it store a large amount of resources, but it also gave him great flexibility in battle. 3 days. Let's wait. There's something I need to do anyway. Leng Shiqi softly muttered to himself. Then, he continued to sit cross-legged and took out a light silver monster core from the system space. This was the monster core of the rank 2 monster, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. Leng Shiqi planned to fuse the Beast Origin Battle Rune again. After breaking through to the Spirit Transformation Realm, he could fuse one more Beast Origin Battle Rune. This way, he would have more choices. With the previous experience, Leng Shiqi knew that fusing the Beast Origin Battle Rune had a high requirement for the strength of his body. Therefore, he had been practicing the 8 stones horizontal training technique for the past 3 months. At this time, his body was comparable to a spirit cultivator at the 9th level of the spirit gathering realm. In addition, Leng Shiqi was now at the spirit transformation realm. Fusing the Beast Origin Battle Rune would not be as dangerous as last time. Then, Leng Shiqi swallowed the monster core of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. As soon as the demonic core entered his mouth, it turned into countless faint silver light spots and merged into his flesh and blood. Bursts of heart-wrenching pain instantly spread throughout his body. Fortunately, his physical body was relatively strong, and he began to mobilize the majestic spirit energy in his body to nourish his flesh and blood. The pain was still within the acceptable range of Leng Shiqi. Gradually, Leng Shiqi outlined the outline of a demon beast from his neck to his lower abdomen. As time passed, the pattern became clearer and clearer, finally forming the shape of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. At this moment, Leng Shiqi's body suddenly emitted a silver brilliance. The brilliance grew and covered his entire body in the blink of an eye. After 2 breaths of time, the light dissipated. Leng Shiqi's body was covered in silver, as if he had been painted with a layer of silver paint. It looked a little strange. Leng Shiqi took off his ink-flowing robe and looked down. It turned out that it wasn't that he was covered in silver, but that every inch of his skin was covered in a layer of thin silver scales. Leng Shiqi casually touched it and felt like he was touching armor. Then he took out a dagger and stabbed at his left arm. However, the dagger only created a burst of sparks when it hit the scales, and the scales were not damaged at all. Oh. It's actually so hard. Leng Shiqi raised his eyebrows in pleasant surprise. It has to be said that his dagger was a rank 2 spirit treasure. Although he didn't use much spirit force, it could easily cut through metal and stone. Leng Shiqi smiled with satisfaction. This way, I have the flexibility of the flowing ink robe on the outside and the hardness of the scales on the inside. Ordinary attacks won't be able to hurt me. Then Leng Shiqi removed the Beast Origin battle pattern and put on the flowing ink robe. After adjusting his state, he began to consolidate his cultivation at the Spirit Transformation Realm. Breaking through to the Spirit Transformation Realm and condensing the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's Beast Origin battle pattern had greatly increased his strength, but he had to constantly improve his strength. The stronger he became, the greater his chance of surviving until the end. One day later, a respectful voice came from outside his tent. "My lord, the gang leader invites you over." Leng Shiqi stopped cultivating after hearing this. He let out a sigh of relief and said, "I know." At the same time, there was a trace of doubt in his heart. What is it? However, he didn't rush out. He closed his eyes and made a strange gesture. Then his aura gradually weakened. When he opened his eyes, his aura had returned to the 9th layer of the pure spirit realm. It was Leng Shiqi who had used the aura concealing spell to hide his cultivation. Then Leng Shiqi walked out of the tent with some doubt. The moment he walked out of the tent, Ziyu obediently flew to his shoulder. When Leng Shiqi was cultivating, he would send Ziyu to guard him. He walked into Yushu's tent with Ziyu. At this moment, only Yushu was inside the tent. He was pacing back and forth as if he was hesitating about something. When he saw Leng Shiqi come in, he handed over a piece of cloth with some words written on it. It looked like a letter. Yushu said anxiously, "This is a letter sent by the leader of the Qingyan League." "Take a look." Ling Shiqi hadn't seen Yushu so anxious in a long time. He knew that something was wrong, so he read the letter. Then Ling Shiqi frowned. This letter was written in Qingyan's tone. The first sentence directly told them that Qingyan had broken through to the spirit transformation realm. How is this possible? Ling Shiqi was secretly shocked. Delta Origi was the first to break through to the spirit transformation realm because of her talent and rank 4 cultivation method. Ling Shiqi knew that he had relied on external help to break through to the spirit transformation realm. He also knew how difficult it was to break through to the spirit transformation realm. He had interacted with Qingyan a few times recently. The last time he saw him, he was only at the 9th layer of the pure spirit realm, a bit weaker than Yushu. How long had it been since then? How could he suddenly break through to the spirit transformation realm? However, since Qingyan had said so, he couldn't be lying. Cultivation was something that couldn't be hidden. There was only one explanation, and that was that Qingyan had also relied on external help to enter the spirit transformation realm. During this period of time, he must have obtained some extremely precious heavenly material and earthly treasure. After thinking about it, Ling Shiqi felt that this was very likely. At the same time, he felt a bit lucky that he had broken through in time. It didn't take long for Ling Shiqi to finish reading the letter. The main content of the letter was that Qingyan wanted to invite the leaders of the various factions to a gathering to discuss the Blood Tower. The Blood Tower was a big problem that everyone couldn't avoid. Qingyan inviting everyone to discuss and share information was indeed a good thing for everyone. However, from the tone of the letter, it seemed that Qingyan had put himself in a leading position. "What do you think?" Yushu's voice came at the right time. Ling Shiqi pondered for a moment and said, "We have to go." Yushu said, "Yes, but Qingyan's goal is obviously not that simple. I also specifically asked about this person. Do you know that the Qingyan League was originally made up of several factions? At first, it wasn't called the Qingyan League, but it soon became his Qingyan League. It can be seen that not only is this person ambitious, but he also has a lot of methods. Especially since he has broken through to the spirit transformation realm. If we go, I'm afraid we won't have much say. So what if he's in the spirit transformation realm? Sometimes cultivation doesn't represent strength. Agree and we'll go together." Ling Shiqi's eyes lit up. Chapter 112. The next day, Ling Shiqi and Yushu brought 10 people to the meeting place. This place was close to the Crimson Tower and far away from the other factions, so they didn't have to worry about it. After all, these 4 factions had clashed with each other more than once or twice. Their accumulated hatred had reached a point where it was difficult to resolve. If it wasn't for the Crimson Tower hanging over their heads, they wouldn't be sitting together peacefully. When they arrived, Ling Shiqi saw a round table in the distance. 4 people were already seated there. One of them was smiling and saying something, but the others all had serious expressions and didn't seem to have any intention of speaking. When they saw Ling Shiqi and Yushu arrive, a young man in a blue robe stood up and walked over. This was the leader of the Qingyan League and the organizer of this meeting, Qingyan. Qingyan walked over with a warm smile and said, "So it's Leader Yu and Vice Leader Dark Crow. Qingyan welcomes you with open arms. Please take a seat." Yushu exchanged a few pleasantries with him and sat down. Ling Shiqi followed closely behind. As for the 10 people who came with them, they stayed where they were. After they sat down, the two began to exchange meaningless pleasantries. The 2 of them had found their opponents and began to flatter each other endlessly. Ling Shiqi glanced at the others. The young man across from him sat next to Qingyan but slightly behind him. He was Qingyan's right-hand man, Yan Feilin, who was at the 8th level of the pure spirit realm. The young man to Ling Shiqi's right was Hengming. He sat there expressionlessly with 2 strange purple scimitars at his waist. When he saw the 2 scimitars, Ling Shiqi was secretly envious. More than a month ago, Ling Shiqi had also fought with Hengming. Although he won, his scimitars were left with 2 thin cracks. He had been injured by Meng Ming's level 4 spirit tool. Leng Shiqi had even planned to assassinate Heng Ming, but he was too cautious and could not find a suitable opportunity. Leng Shiqi was slightly surprised by the person sitting next to Heng Ming. He was extreme evil. He was the leader of the Triad Alliance, Extreme Evil, who led the Leng Shiqi to the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile 3 months ago. Unexpectedly, after a few twists and turns, he actually ran to Seiji. Extreme Evil and Heng Ming were both at the 9th level of the pure spirit realm. At this moment, the people from the 3 major forces were all here. Only Blood Moon was left. Not long after, the Delta Orgi also arrived. Even from afar, she didn't hide her powerful aura of the spirit transformation realm. Qin Yan let out a soft snort. His spirit force moved and the same aura of the spirit transformation realm surged out. 2 powerful auras collided with a loud bang, stirring up a gust of wind, blowing the gravel under their feet. However, Leng Shiqi sensed that although Qin Yan's aura looked very powerful at first glance, it was a bit lacking. In fact, there was even a faint sense of impatience in his aura. It seems that he did indeed rely on external items to forcefully break through. Leng Shiqi thought to himself. However, he didn't understand why the Delta Orgi would so openly announce that she had broken through to the spirit transformation realm. Leng Shiqi knew that the Delta Orgi had the aura concealment technique. She could completely hide her cultivation and use it at a critical moment to catch others off guard. However, since the Delta Orgi had made such a choice, she must have her reasons. Leng Shiqi didn't ask too much. Moon Lord Blood Moon's cultivation is indeed profound. Please take a seat. Qin Yan took the initiative to disperse his spirit pressure and laughed. However, there was a layer of sweat on his palms hidden in his sleeves. The Delta Orgi also withdrew her spirit force and raised her chin like a proud white swan before sitting down. Chen looked at her with respect but didn't sit down. Instead, he stood respectfully behind the Delta Orgi. Seeing that everyone was here, Qin Yan said, "Everyone, it has been a year and a half since we arrived on the Blood Fog Island. There were more than 10,000 people who came here, but what about now? Only 100 or so people remain. It can be said that those who have survived until now are 1 in 100, and the few of you here are 1 in 1,000. I believe in your talent, perseverance, and..." Just as Qin Yan was talking, Xiongming suddenly said, "Get to the point." Qin Yan's expression darkened when Xiongming interrupted him so rudely, but he didn't lose his temper. Instead, he continued, "In short, none of you want to die, right?" Everyone's expressions changed when they heard this. That's right, these people could be said to be the most powerful people on the Blood Fog Island. They enjoyed large amounts of resources and constantly worked hard to improve themselves. Why? Was it for the so-called power of the guild master? Perhaps, but definitely not all of it. This was because they knew that these were all rootless waters. If they couldn't leave the island, then it wouldn't take long for them to be devoured by the endless void. Their ultimate goal was to get out alive. This blood-red tower was the last obstacle that stood in their way. Qin Yan continued, "Based on the current situation, the blood-red sky will shrink to where we are in about a month's time. In other words, we must enter the Blood Fog Tower in a month. There are 4 entrances to the Blood Fog Tower. I'm sure everyone knows this, but I suggest that we work together to enter one of the entrances. That way, we'll be able to gather the strength of everyone on the Blood Fog Island, and our chances of survival will increase exponentially." Qin Yan carefully observed everyone's expressions after saying this. However, each of them was smarter than the other, and none of them showed any emotion. Leng Shiqi and Yushu looked at each other, and the former secretly signaled with their eyes that they couldn't agree. Putting everything else aside, who would they listen to if the 4 forces joined forces? The leaders of these factions were all proud and arrogant people, and none of them would refuse to listen to anyone else. In addition, they couldn't forget that there had been many fierce conflicts in the past 3 months. Even if they forced themselves to work together, they wouldn't trust each other at all. Delta Orgi was the first to object. I don't agree. Qingyan League leader, if this is all you want, then I'll take my leave. I don't agree either, said Meng Shiqi. Yushu also spoke up. That's right. Since there are 4 entrances to the Blood Fog Tower, each of us can have one. Why should we force ourselves to work together? Plus, everyone knows that even if we work together, we won't trust each other. You. Qin Yan didn't expect the other 3 to reject him so decisively. At this moment, his face turned gloomy. Chapter 113. When Qin Yan saw that the others had rejected his suggestion so decisively, he shouted, "You'll regret this." As soon as he finished speaking, a few dozen figures vaguely appeared in the distance and surrounded them. Hengming silently gripped the hilt of his saber. Extreme Evil said, "What? Does the Qinyan League leader want to keep us here?" The atmosphere in the room became tense. Qinyan stared at Extreme Evil, then suddenly struck out with his palm. A powerful palm energy mixed with a scorching heat swept over. Extreme Evil was shocked, but he did not panic. He struck out a few times in succession, and the wind generated by his palms was not weak either. But when Azure Flame's palm force met Extreme Fiend's palm force, it immediately crushed it as easily as crushing dry weeds. Extreme Evil's expression finally changed, and he hurriedly backed away. At this moment, Hengming moved and struck out with his sabers. 2 sharp sabers completely shattered the last of the palm energy. Hengming's eyes were filled with killing intent as he stared straight at Qinyan. Qinyan said, "Don't worry, I don't mean any harm." As soon as he finished speaking, he struck out with his palm again. And his target was Leng Shiqi. "Humph, you still want to show off?" When Leng Shiqi saw Qinyan attacking Extreme Evil and himself, he knew what Qinyan was planning. Faced with Qinyan's powerful palm energy, Leng Shiqi also struck out with his own palm energy. The palm energy was not strong, but it brought about a strong gust of wind, and within the gust of wind, there was also a trace of coldness. The scorching palm energy and the cold gust of wind collided, and a sizzling sound was heard. The 2 forces, one hot and one cold, were evenly matched. Qingyan's heart sank, and he felt a little embarrassed. He secretly increased his strength, but the result was that he still could not defeat Leng Shiqi. At that moment, Yushu stood up, his hand gripping the hilt of his saber. It seemed as though he would attack at any moment. Seeing this, Qinyan withdrew his palm with a gloomy face. Leng Shiqi stood silently beside Yushu. At this moment, Seiji and the Yushu clan members were pressuring Qinyan. If Qinyan dared to attack again, they would join forces and attack him. He didn't seem to fear a spirit transformation realm expert at all. Qinyan was also in great pain. He originally planned to display his strength as a spirit transformation realm cultivator to intimidate the Seiji and the Yushu clan. He wanted them to know how powerful he was and that cooperating with him was the wisest decision. His targets were not Hengming and Yushu, but Extreme Evil and Leng Shiqi. However, he didn't expect to lose to Leng Shiqi. Although they were evenly matched, he was 1 realm higher than Leng Shiqi. This result made it seem as if he, a spirit transformation realm cultivator, was not very powerful. As a result, he couldn't say what he wanted to say. He could only watch them leave with a dark expression. Before Extreme Evil left, he said to him, "I thought the Qinyan League's leader was very powerful, but it seems like he's only so-so." Qinyan didn't speak, but his fists were clenched tightly. No one had expected the meeting to end so quickly. The main reason was that everyone had vaguely guessed Qinyan's purpose before coming. They wanted to get some information from him, but it ended before they could do anything. If it was just Yushu and Qinyan, it might have been possible. However, Delta Origi and Hengming were not the type to chat for half a day. They both went straight to the point, which led to the gathering ending so quickly. However, after everyone left, Leng Shiqi and Delta Origi secretly met. They exchanged information about the blood-colored tower as soon as they arrived, but unfortunately, there was nothing valuable. After all, no one could get close to the blood-colored tower. Ling Shiqi said with a serious expression, "We will enter the blood-colored tower in a month." Aha, Delta Origi's expression was also very serious. They both knew that there were only two outcomes after entering the blood-colored tower: get out or die. This might be their last meeting. However, neither of them showed any other emotions. Take care. Break through to the spirit transformation realm as soon as possible. After that, the two of them left. Ling Shiqi turned around with a hesitant expression. In the end, he circulated his spiritual energy and released the spiritual pressure of the spirit transformation realm. Delta Origi's eyes lit up when she felt this spiritual pressure. At that moment, she suddenly heard the sound of something breaking through the air behind her. She leaned slightly to the side and reached out with 2 fingers. It was an emerald jade hairpin. Ling Shiqi returned to the Yushu clan and went straight to his tent to consolidate his cultivation. 2 days later, he had completely consolidated his cultivation. At the same time, a notification appeared before him. System upgrade complete. Ling Shiqi immediately called out the system and looked at his information. Name, Ling Shiqi, Lu Xingji. Cultivation, Spirit Transformation Realm Level 1 Cultivation Method, Rank 3 Cultivation Method, Moonlight Cloud Manual Rank 3 Cultivation Method, Beast Origin Demonic Technique Bloodline. Spiritual Skills, Rank 2 Spiritual Skill, Heavy Cross Spear Mastery Rank 2 Spiritual Skill, Formation Breaking Spear Mastery Rank 2 Spiritual Skill, 6 Yang Palms Mastery Level 2 Spiritual Technique, Wind Catching Kick, Level 2 Spiritual Skill, Mountain Destroying Finger, Perfection Level 2 Spiritual Skill, Mysterious Cloud Spike, Rank 3 Spiritual Skill, Channel Breaking Sword Aura, System Coins. 521. There were no changes to his information. He then looked at the system interface and saw that there was an additional word, map. Ling Shiqi immediately opened the map, and a circular map appeared in front of him. However, 99% of the map was black. There was only a small white dot at the bottom right corner. Ling Shiqi guessed, is this a fog map? Then, he opened the map and sank into the ground. As he continued to move, more and more white areas appeared on the map. He could clearly see some of the terrain in the white areas, but that was it. With this map, I don't have to worry about things like fog formations, but it doesn't seem to be very useful. Maybe there are other functions. I'll slowly explore it in the future, Ling Shiqi thought as he returned to the tent. Then, he opened the lottery interface that he had the most hope for. When he clicked on it, he saw that there were 3 lottery options. He was delighted. The 3 options were beginner lottery, intermediate lottery, and unlimited lottery. At this moment, all 3 options were lit up. Ling Shiqi clicked on the question mark next to the intermediate lottery. He found out that it cost 100 system coins to enter the intermediate lottery. He had always thought that he had saved up a lot of system coins, but now it seemed that he only had enough for 5 draws. This made Ling Shiqi feel very helpless, so he muttered to himself, the beginner lottery only costs 10 system coins, but the intermediate lottery costs 10 times more. Is the intermediate lottery really that valuable? Chapter 114. Ling Shiqi was surprised at the amount of system coins required for the intermediate lottery. However, after thinking about it, his Hand of the Earth was an intermediate prize. The Hand of the Earth had now been developed to a very high level. It could be said to be a combination of restriction, escape, defense, and attack. Moreover, it did not require any hand seals. It was simply amazing. Thinking of this, Ling Shiqi felt relieved. As the saying goes, you get what you pay for. The value of the intermediate prize was definitely not something that the beginner prize could compare to. Then, Ling Shiqi clicked on the intermediate lottery option and chose 5 consecutive draws. After a burst of rainbow-colored light. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the intermediate prize, voice-changing technique. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the intermediate prize, fairy talisman. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the intermediate prize, soul essence. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the intermediate prize, righteous thunder orb. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the intermediate prize, Frost Sword Aura. Voice-changing technique? Looking at the 5 prizes, Leng Shiqi felt that the most interesting one was the voice-changing technique. After picking it up, he found that it was a level 2 spiritual skill. Leng Shiqi did not hesitate and directly used his unlimited skill points to cultivate the voice-changing technique to the maximum level. Then, Leng Shiqi coughed lightly and his voice became rough. Leng Shiqi adjusted it again. His voice was sometimes hoarse, sometimes deep, and sometimes sharp. He could even imitate the voices of children and women. Not only that, he could even imitate the voices of small animals. The intermediate prize is indeed extraordinary. Leng Shiqi said with a hint of joy. The voice-changing technique seemed useless, but if used ingeniously, it could produce unexpected results. Then, Leng Shiqi picked up the fairy talisman. It was a square gem with a dark blue orb inlaid in the middle. It was tied with a simple string. A line of information appeared beside it. After wearing it, it can speed up the recovery of spiritual power. Leng Shiqi was delighted when he saw this line of words. Oh. Not bad. One had to know that as one's cultivation increased, the time it took to recover spiritual power would become longer. If they were in a dangerous environment, the sooner they recovered their spiritual energy, the more confident they would be. Leng Shiqi directly put the fairy amulet on his neck, and sure enough, he felt the spiritual power in his body become more agile. He chuckled and reached out to touch the wisp of light green flame-like thing floating in the air. It was a wisp of soul essence. Leng Shiqi didn't know who or what this soul essence belonged to, but he knew from the item's information that as long as he absorbed this soul essence, his mental power would increase greatly. With a curl of his finger, the soul essence flew toward him and entered between his eyebrows. In the blink of an eye, Leng Shiqi felt refreshed, and then there was a buzzing sound in his head, as if something had been opened. His vision suddenly went black, and when he could see again, he found himself in a narrow and dark space. To his surprise, he had turned into a small ball of green light. He controlled himself to shake around, but didn't find anything special. However, not long after, his vision went black again. Leng Shiqi opened his eyes, but immediately felt a sharp pain in his head, causing him to groan in pain. Did I overuse my mental power? This was because he had extracted the blood of many demonic beasts, and this process also consumed a lot of mental energy. He remembered that when he extracted the blood of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile and several rank 1 monsters, a similar situation occurred. It seems that the dark space should also be related to mental power. In short, it's a good thing. Leng Shiqi murmured. Next, he picked up the purple-blue bead. This bead was half the size of a fist, and there were a few lightning runes engraved on it. When he picked up the bead, he saw the information about it, and then Leng Shiqi hurriedly stored it in the system space. The information said, Righteous Lightning Bead, a one-time consumable. Its power is equivalent to the full power attack of a spirit cultivator in the middle stage of the spirit transformation realm. It has additional damage to evil things. It was equivalent to the full power attack of a spirit cultivator in the middle stage of the spirit transformation realm. Leng Shiqi dared to say that if he threw out this bead, no one in the current Blood Mist Island would be able to block it. With this, he was more confident about the battle that would take place a month later. Finally, he picked up the small booklet. This was the rank 3 spiritual skill, Frost Sword Chi. He still used unlimited skill points to cultivate it to perfection in a short period of time, and then his eyes revealed a pondering expression. This Frost Sword Chi was similar to the unblocking Meridian Sword Chi that he had cultivated before. However, the unblocking Meridian Sword Chi's specialty was to seal the meridians and block the circulation of spirit energy, while the Frost Sword Chi had a dense cold air and had the effect of freezing. The two were comparable. However, Leng Shiqi had already integrated the channel unfolding sword aura into the mesmerizing Eyes of Flowers technique. Thus, he planned to do his best to integrate the frigid frost sword aura into it in the next month. With the previous example, it would be relatively easier. This way, He could target different opponents and choose between the chaotic blossom dazzling eyes with the unblocking meridian sword chi or the frost sword chi. As a result, this move became even more flexible. After counting all the prizes, Ling Shiqi was very satisfied because every item was very useful and made him feel that it was very worth it. He was still thinking about whether or not to secretly fill his pockets and get something from the sect to draw a few more times. After ending the intermediate lottery, Ling Shiqi called out the system interface again and his gaze fell on the lit-up unlimited lottery. This unlimited lottery really gave him unlimited possibilities. The first time, he had drawn unlimited skill points. Ling Shiqi was very clear that if it wasn't for this godly prize, he might not have reached where he was today. The second time, he had drawn the Hand of the Earth, a special spiritual skill with endless uses. If it wasn't for the Hand of the Earth, he wouldn't have accidentally entered the underground space, and it would be even more impossible for him to obtain the demonic beast technique and have his current cultivation and combat strength. The most important thing was that he wouldn't have known that the second Heaven's Bane was coming, otherwise he might have died in the Heaven's Bane. It could be said that they were all linked, so from a certain point of view, the Hand of the Earth was no less helpful to Ling Shiqi than the unlimited skill points. Now that Ling Shiqi had another unlimited lottery chance, he was naturally looking forward to it. Phew. Ling Shiqi exhaled heavily, raised his finger, and clicked on the unlimited lottery option. He stared at the dazzling light in the system without blinking. After a few breaths of time, the light dissipated, and he didn't see anything. Just when he thought he had seen wrongly, a line of words appeared in front of him: "Congratulations to the host for obtaining the advanced prize, Supercilious Eyes." You're tuning in to the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.